Chapter 1. The Dragon's Decision. The winds carry the scent of death and ash across the ruins of Vaes Dothrak. Daenerys Targaryen stands among the blackened stones where the great Khaleesi funeral pyre had burned months ago, watching her 3 dragons circle overhead like living shadows against the crimson sunset. Drogon's wings catch the dying light as he swoops low, his scales already showing hints of the deep black they will become. Rhaegal and Viserion follow their brother, their green and cream scales gleaming as they hunt for prey among the ruins. The mother of dragons pulls her riding cloak tighter against the evening chill. Her small khalasar has made camp in the ruins of what was once the most sacred city of the Dothraki, but now feels like a tomb. The great bronze horses still stand sentinel, but the markets are empty. The palace is cold. Only her people remain. Barely 200 souls who chose to follow the widow of Khal Drogo into the wasteland. Khaleesi. Sir Jorah Mormont approaches from the direction of their horses, his weathered face grim in the fading light. The exiled knight carries a leather satchel, the kind used by ravens. His armor bears the dust of hard riding, and she can see the weariness in his green eyes. A rider came from Pentos. Magister Illyrio sends word. Daenerys turns from watching her dragons. What word? Jorah opens the satchel and withdraws several pieces of parchment, their edges worn from travel. Robert Baratheon is dead, Khaleesi, killed by a boar while hunting. His voice carries a weight she has not heard before. The usurper's line sits the Iron Throne no longer. The words hit her like a physical blow. Robert Baratheon, the man who drove her family into exile, who haunted her childhood with tales of his war hammer and his rage. Dead. She feels her dragons sense her emotion, their cries echoing across the ruins as they wheel overhead. How? She asks, though part of her knows it matters little. The man who killed her father, who destroyed her family, is gone. The details matter less than what comes after, Jorah says, holding up another piece of parchment. The realm tears itself apart, Khaleesi. 5 men now claim to be king. He spreads the messages before her like a maester laying out charts. Joffrey Baratheon holds King's Landing, but he is young and cruel. Stannis Baratheon claims the boy is a bastard, and the throne is his by right. Renly Baratheon has crowned himself with the support of the Reach. Robb Stark has been proclaimed king in the north after his father's execution, and Balon Greyjoy has declared himself king of the Iron Islands. Daenerys stares at the parchments, her mind racing. 5 kings, the realm divided. They fight each other? They tear each other's throats out, Jorah confirms, his weathered face showing the first smile she has seen in months. The Lannisters war with the Starks across the Riverlands. The Baratheon brothers prepare to fight for the Stormlands and the Reach. The Greyjoys raid the north, while Stark forces are away. The realm has not seen such chaos since the Dance of Dragons. The Dance of Dragons, when Targaryen fought Targaryen, and the dragons died. But now there are dragons again, her dragons, the only 3 in the world. She looks up at them, circling like living weapons of legend. Drogon lets out a cry that sounds almost like triumph. Magister Illyrio offers ships, Jorah continues. Safe passage to Qarth, where wealthy merchants wait to bid for your dragons. The Qarthin have gold enough to buy armies, and they hunger for the exotic. You could live well there, Khaleesi. Build strength slowly. Gather resources. Daenerys walks to the edge of the ruined plaza, looking out over the Dothraki Sea. The grass stretches endlessly toward distant horizons, hiding the bones of countless riders who thought themselves invincible. In the distance, smoke rises from their small camp where her remaining followers prepare the evening meal. These people followed her into the wasteland, believing in her despite having every reason to abandon a widow with no husband, no hoard, and no gold. Qarth, she repeats, testing the word. Ought to be a curiosity for spice merchants and silk traders, to beg for coin while they debate whether my dragons are real. She turns back to Jorah. and he sees something new in her violet eyes, not the desperate hope of a girl seeking shelter, but the calculating gaze of a conqueror. While they fight over the scraps of Robert's kingdom, I should hide in the gardens of Corth? Jorah's expression grows cautious. Khaleesi, Westeros is dangerous. These 5 kings have armies, castles, fleets. You have dragons, yes, but they are still young. And your followers, brave as they are, number barely. My followers chose to follow the blood of the dragon, Daenerys interrupts, her voice growing stronger. They didn't choose to follow a beggar seeking charity in foreign markets. She looks again at the parchments, or studying the names of the claimants. Tell me about their strength, their weaknesses. Jorah hesitates, then begins to speak as a strategist rather than a protector. Joffrey holds the capital and the crown, but he's hated. The boy is cruel and his mother is a Lannister. Many question his legitimacy. Stannis has the better claim by law, but he's rigid and friendless. His brother Renly is well loved, but has no legal right. The Stark boy fights for justice and revenge, but independence. He doesn't want the Iron Throne for himself. He pauses. They're all strong, Khaleesi, but they're also destroying each other. And none of them have dragons, Daenerys says quietly. Above them, Viserion lands on a broken statue with a thud that sends dust cascading down. The cream and gold dragon is already the size of a large cat, and growing visibly each day. In a year, he might be large enough to ride. In 2 years, large enough to burn armies. Khaleesi, think carefully about this, Jorah warns. Westeros nearly destroyed your family once. Your brother. My brother was a fool who had no dragons and no friends, Daenerys cuts him off. He begged for an army from strangers because he had nothing of his own. She gestures toward their camp, where cook fires are beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. I have the blood of old Valyria. I have dragons, and I have people who chose to follow me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. She walks back to where Drogon perches on a fallen pillar, the black dragon watching her with eyes like pools of fire. When she extends her hand, he comes to her without hesitation, his claws gripping her leather gauntlet as she lifts him to her shoulder. The weight of him is growing. Soon he'll be too large for such gestures. The realm is weak, she continues, feeling Drogon's warmth against her neck. Divided. They expect me to hide in Essos and play merchant games while they spill each other's blood. Instead, I'll come to them when they're exhausted from fighting, when they've forgotten that dragons once conquered 7 kingdoms. Jorah stares at her for a long moment, and she can see him weighing her words. Finally, he nods slowly. If we're to do this, we'll need ships, more ships than Illyrio offers, and we'll need to move quickly before the war resolves itself. Pentos, Daenerys says immediately. The Magisters have ships, and they fear the Dothraki Sea. They'll give us what we need for safe passage. She looks around at the ruins of Vaes Dothrak, seeing not a tomb, but a launching point. We take what ships we can get, and we sail for Dragonstone. Dragonstone? Jorah's eyebrows rise. Khaleesi, that's Stannis Baratheon's seat. That's my family's seat, she corrects him firmly. The first Targaryen stronghold in Westeros, where my ancestors planned their conquest 300 years ago. Drogon shifts on her shoulder, his small claws finding purchase in her riding leathers. If I'm to reclaim the Iron Throne, I'll begin where the conquest began. That night, Daenerys calls her Khaleesi council in the largest intact building they can find, a half-collapsed temple to some forgotten horse god. Her blood riders sit in a circle around a small fire. Jogo, to lean and fierce with his whip coiled at his side. Aggo, stocky and reliable with his bow across his knees. Rakaro, young but deadly with his arak, gleaming in the firelight. Ser Jorah stands slightly apart, representing the world beyond the Dothraki Sea. We leave the grass sea, Daenerys announces without preamble. We sail across the narrow water to the land of my birth. Jogo's scarred face shows no surprise. Blood of my blood wishes to claim the iron chair of her fathers. The iron chair, she agrees. But first, the dragon castle, Dragonstone, where my ancestor Aegon gathered his strength before he burned the 7 kingdoms into one. The water is wide, Aggo says, his voice careful. Dothraki are not fish, Khaleesi. Ships are wooden Khaleesi that bear riders but give no strength. Ships are tools, Daenerys replies. Like arrows or araks, we use them to reach our destination, then we fight on land as Dothraki fight. She looks around the circle, meeting each man's eyes. Who among you fears the sea more than he loves his Khaleesi? The 3 blood riders exchange glances, then touch their foreheads in the Dothraki gesture of respect. We follow where blood of our blood leads, Rakaro says for all of them. If the Dragon Queen flies across the water, her blood riders will follow. And the others? Jorah asks quietly. The rest of your Khalasar? Some may choose to remain in the grasslands, rather than face the unknown sea. Daenerys considers this. 200 followers, perhaps less. Some will choose to stay, she knows. The very young, the very old, those too afraid to leave the only world they've known. But others will follow her anywhere, outbound by something stronger than fear. In the morning, I will speak to them, she decides. Those who wish to remain in the grass, sea may do so with honor. Those who wish to follow their Khaleesi to reclaim her birthright will come with me. She stands, and her dragons sense the change in her mood. Above them, she can hear the beat of wings as Rhaegal and Viserion settle on the broken roof. How long to reach Pentos? She asks Jorah. 2 days hard riding to reach Illyrio's latest trade convoy, he replies. From there, perhaps a week to the city, depending on the roads and weather. And ships? Magister Illyrio controls more vessels than he mentioned in his letter. For the right price, or the right threat, he'll provide what we need. Daenerys nods, already planning. Then we ride at dawn, or send word to the Khaleesi. Tomorrow, we begin the journey to reclaim what was stolen from my family. As the council breaks up and her followers return to their own fires, Daenerys remains in the ruined temple with only Ser Jorah and her dragons for company. Drogon curls against her feet like a cat, while his brothers hunt mice among the fallen stones. Are you certain of this path, Khaleesi? Jorah asks quietly. Once we sail from Pentos, there's no returning to the simple life. You'll be declaring yourself a player in the Game of Thrones, and that game destroys more players than it crowns. Daenerys looks down at Drogon, watching the firelight reflect off his black scales. I was born to play this game, Ser Jorah. I'm the last daughter of the Dragon Kings, and I have dragons again for the first time in over a century. She reaches down to stroke the dragon's neck, feeling the warmth of the creature that hatched from stone through fire and blood. Robert's war is over. Now comes the dragon's war. Outside, the wind carries the sound of her Khalasar, settling for the night, horses nickering, leather creaking, low voices speaking in Dothraki around dying fires. Tomorrow they'll ride east toward Pentos and the ships that will carry them across the narrow sea. Tomorrow she begins the journey to reclaim her birthright. But tonight, in the ruins of Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys Targaryen sits with her dragons and plans the conquest of Westeros, while 5 would-be kings tear each other apart, never dreaming that the daughter of Aerys II has decided to come home. The last of the sunset fades beyond the grasslands, and the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Above the ruins, 3 dragons circle in the night, their wings casting moving shadows over the ancient stones. The blood of the dragon has awakened, and Westeros will never be the same. Chapter 2. The dragon returns to Dragonstone. The ancient fortress of Dragonstone rises from the mist like a sleeping dragon, its black stone walls carved into the shapes of worms and gargoyles that seem to watch the approaching ships with stone eyes. Daenerys stands at the bow of the lead vessel, her silver hair whipping in the salt wind as she sees her ancestral home for the first time. Behind her, 2 other ships follow through the treacherous waters around the island, their Dothraki crews struggling with unfamiliar rigging under the guidance of Pentoshi sailors. The night sky is clear, filled with stars that reflect off the dark water like scattered diamonds. Above the ships, 3 dragons wheel through the darkness, their wings beating steadily as they follow their mother's vessel toward the ancient Targaryen stronghold. Drogon's black scales make him nearly invisible against the night sky, while Rhaegal and Viserion are easier to spot as they spiral around the ship's mast. The sea road to Dragonstone has not seen Targaryen ships in 17 years, Ser Jorah says quietly, moving to stand beside her at the rail. Since your father fled to Dragonstone during Robert's rebellion, and your mother fled with you and Viserys after his death. Daenerys grips the wooden rail, to feeling the ship roll beneath her feet. I was born here. On this very island, during the worst storm in living memory, Jorah confirms. They called you the Stormborn for it. Your mother died bringing you into this world, and within days, Stannis Baratheon's fleet was approaching to take the island for Robert. Sir Willem Darry spirited you and your brother away to Braavos in the dead of night. She studies the approaching castle, its dragon-shaped towers reaching toward the stars like claws. And now I return, with dragons of my own. The harbour is eerily quiet, as their small fleet navigates between the sea stacks that guard Dragonstone's approach. A few torches burn on the docks, but there are no signs of the great fleet that should guard such an important stronghold. Their ships tie up at the stone quays without challenge, and Daenerys sees why. The harbour holds only fishing boats, and a single merchant galley flying Tyroshi colours. Where is Stannis Baratheon's fleet? She asks, stepping onto the dock. The stone beneath her feet is carved with dragon motifs, worn smooth by centuries of salt spray. Gone to Storm's End, according to our sources in Pentos, Jorah replies, helping her steady herself on the unfamiliar surface. Behind them, her blood riders lead the Dothraki ashore, their horses nickering nervously in the confined space. Stannis has abandoned Dragonstone to press his claim from his ancestral seat in the Stormlands. He left only a skeleton garrison. As if summoned by their conversation, a small group of men emerges from the shadows near the harbour master's tower. As they wear the colours of House Baratheon, yellow and black, but their weapons remain sheathed. Their leader, a grizzled man with a seamed face, approaches with hands raised to show peaceful intent. "You'll be the Targaryen girl, then," he says without ceremony. "Sir Axel Florent, left to hold Dragonstone for King Stannis." His eyes go wide as he sees the dragons circling overhead. 7 hells, they're real. "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men," she replies, her voice carrying across the harbour. "This is my ancestral seat, and I have come to claim it." Sir Axel stares at the dragons, then at the 3 ships full of Dothraki warriors. "We've got perhaps 50 men in the garrison, Your Grace, but King Stannis took the rest to Storm's End. He seems to be calculating odds and finding them wanting. I suppose the question is whether we die fighting or live serving." "Those who serve willingly will find me a generous queen," Daenerys says. "Those who choose to leave may do so with honour and safe passage. But this island belongs to the blood of the dragon." Within the hour, the banners of House Baratheon are lowered from the Sea Dragon Tower, and the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen flies over Dragonstone for the first time since her father's death. Most of Stannis' men choose to remain and serve, recognizing both her mercy and the reality of their situation. Sir Axel kneels before her in the great hall, offering his sword and his knowledge of the castle's defences. Daenerys walks through the halls of Dragonstone as the first light of dawn begins to filter through the ancient windows. The castle is everything she imagined and nothing she expected. Massive and forbidding, but also strangely familiar. Dragon motifs are carved into every surface. Door frames shaped like dragon mouths, columns wrought to resemble dragon claws, walls adorned with relief or carvings of the great worms her ancestors rode. "This was Aegon the Conqueror's seat before he took the Seven Kingdoms," Jorah explains as they climb the winding stairs of the stone drum. He planned his conquest from the chamber of the painted table, mapping out his strategy with his sister wives, Visenya and Rhaenys. They emerge into the famous chamber, and Daenerys gasps despite herself. The painted table dominates the room, a massive map of Westeros, carved from a single piece of wood and painted in exquisite detail. Every castle, every road, every river is marked with painstaking care. Candles in iron holders, shaped like dragon heads, provide flickering light that makes the map seem to move and breathe. 300 years of Targaryen rule began in this room, she whispers, running her fingers over the carved representation of King's Landing. Aegon stood here with Balerion the Black Dread and decided to make himself king of 7 kingdoms instead of 1. Above them, the sound of wings echoes through the castle as her dragons explore their new home. Drogon's roar reverberates through the stone corridors, and somewhere in the distance she hears the answering calls of Rhaegal and Viserion. The dragons sense the ancient power of this place, the weight of history in every stone. "The Dragonmont," Sir Axel says, pointing through a window toward the smoking peak that dominates the island. The old texts say it's full of dragon glass, obsidian formed by dragonfire in ages past, and caves, my lady, deep caves where the old dragons used to nest. As if drawn by some ancestral memory, Drogon appears at the window, perching on the stone sill with his wings spread. He's grown noticeably since they left Vaes Dothrak, now the size of a small dog rather than a cat. His red eyes fix on Daenerys before he launches himself toward the distant mountain, Rhaegal and Viserion following like living shadows. Let them explore, she decides. This is their home as much as mine. That morning, but ravens begin arriving at Dragonstone's rookery with reports from across the 7 kingdoms. Daenerys sits in the chamber of the painted table while Ser Jorah reads the intelligence they've gathered during their voyage from Pentos. "Robb Stark has won another victory in the Riverlands," he reports, pointing to the region on the painted map. His forces defeated a Lannister army at the Golden Tooth, and he's now threatening Casterly Rock itself. The young wolf fights well. And the others? Renly Baratheon marches north from Highgarden with the largest army in the field. Nearly 100,000 men, Jorah continues, moving his finger along the Rose Road. The Tyrells have thrown their full support behind his claim, along with most of the Stormlands. He styles himself the true king, and gathers strength for a march on King's Landing. Daenerys studies the map, trying to understand the movements of armies across a continent she's never seen. What of his brother? Stannis has withdrawn to Storm's End with his fleet, and what forces remain loyal to him, Jorah says, indicating the castle on the map's eastern coast. Perhaps 20,000 men, but they're seasoned soldiers, and his ships are the finest in Westeros. He claims Joffrey is a bastard born of incest, and that the throne belongs to him by right of succession. He's not wrong about Joffrey, she muses, remembering the intelligence reports about the Lannister Queen's relationship with her twin brother. And Joffrey himself? Holds King's Landing with Lannister gold and what remains of the royal fleet. Perhaps 50,000 men guard the capital, but they're scattered across multiple fronts. Jorah's finger traces the various theatres of war. The boy king faces enemies from every direction, Stark from the north, Baratheon from the south, and east, Greyjoy from the west. Daenerys leans back in the carved chair that serves as a throne in this chamber. 5 kings, all fighting for the same prize, and none of them know that the 6th has come home. "What are your commands, Khaleesi?" Jorah asks. "Do we gather strength here in secret, or make our presence known?" She considers this, watching dust motes dance in the morning sunlight that streams through the ancient windows. The realm needs to know that House Targaryen lives, that the dragons have returned. She stands and moves to the map, placing her hand on the carved representation of King's Landing. Send ravens to all 5 kings. Let them know that Daenerys Stormborn has come home to claim what is hers by right. By midday, a dozen ravens carry messages bearing the 3-headed dragon seal to castles across Westeros. The words are simple but unmistakable. The daughter of Aerys II has returned with fire and blood to reclaim the Iron Throne. The responses begin arriving within days, and they are as varied as the men who send them. From King's Landing comes mockery wrapped in royal parchment. Joffrey Baratheon's message is brief and crude. The whore queen of the Dothraki savages may keep her barbarian husband's horse and play at being a dragon. The Iron Throne belongs to House Baratheon, and pretenders will be fed to the flames. The seal bears the marks of hasty application, suggesting the boy king's temper got the better of him. Brave words from a bastard who's never seen a dragon, Daenerys observes, setting the message aside. From Winterfell comes no response at all, though their ravens return unharmed. Robb Stark, it seems, chooses to ignore her claim entirely, at least for now. Stannis Baratheon's reply arrives on parchment of finest quality, written in precise script that speaks to the man's rigid nature. Daenerys of House Targaryen may present her claim before the lawful king of Westeros at Storm's End, where justice will be dispensed according to the laws of gods and men. The throne belongs to the rightful heir of Robert Baratheon, not to the spawn of the Mad King. The message is cold, calculating, but not dismissive. Stannis at least acknowledges her as a potential threat worthy of formal response. He'll want to negotiate, Jorah observes. Stannis is nothing if not pragmatic. He knows another claimant complicates his path to the throne. From wherever Renly has made camp comes a letter that drips with the youngest Baratheon's famous charm. The Queen across the narrow sea is welcome to return to Westeros and enjoy the hospitality of the rightful king. Perhaps we might arrange a meeting to discuss terms for her peaceful retirement to some pleasant holdfast, where she might live quietly with her pets. The casual dismissal stings more than Joffrey's crude insults. He doesn't take us seriously, Daenerys notes. That may be useful. But the most interesting response comes from an unexpected source. Or the raven bearing the sun and spear of House Martell arrives with a message written in the flowing script of Dawn. Princess Daenerys Targaryen, rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms. House Martell remembers the murder of Princess Aelia and her children. The blood of the dragon has friends in Dawn, and vengeance long delayed may yet be served. A ship sails from Sunspear, bearing an envoy who would speak with your grace of matters of mutual interest. The seal belongs to Prince Doran Martell himself. Daenerys holds the Dornish message for a long moment, feeling the weight of unexpected opportunity. Dawn remembers, she murmurs. They have reason to hate the Lannisters, Jorah agrees. Tywin Lannister's men murdered Elia Martell and her children during the sack of King's Landing. If Dawn is willing to support your claim, then I have my first ally, she finishes, and perhaps the key to everything else. That evening, she stands on the battlements of the Sea Dragon Tower, watching the sun set over the narrow sea. The waters stretch endlessly toward the horizon, hiding the eastern lands where she spent her childhood in exile. But now she looks west, toward the 7 kingdoms that await her claim. Her dragons have returned from their exploration of the Dragonmont, and they perch around her like living gargoyles. Drogon settles on the stone parapet, his wings folding as he fixes his red eyes on the distant lights of ships passing in the night. Rhaegal and Viserion claim spots on nearby merlons, their bronze and cream scales gleaming in the torchlight. The game has begun, she tells them softly. 5 kings fight for a throne, while a 6th watches from the shadows. She reaches out to stroke Drogon's neck, feeling the warmth that radiates from his scales. But we won't remain in the shadows long. Above Dragonstone, storm clouds gather on the horizon, and lightning flickers in the distance like dragonfire. The Stormborn has come home at last, and Westeros will never be the same. Chapter 3. The Game of Ravens. The morning sun slants through the tall windows of the Red Keep's council chamber, casting long shadows across the polished oak table where the small council of King Joffrey Baratheon meets in session. Grand Maester Pycelle adjusts his chains as he unfolds a piece of parchment bearing the three-headed dragon seal, his aged hands trembling slightly as he reads the message aloud. Brought to the usurper calling himself King of the Seven Kingdoms, Pycelle begins, his voice quavering with each word. I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. I have returned to reclaim what was stolen from my family. Bend the knee, or face the consequences. Fire and blood. The silence that follows is broken only by the sound of Queen Cersei's goblet hitting the table with enough force to slosh wine across the polished wood. Her green eyes burn with fury as she stares at the offensive parchment. The Targaryen whore dares threaten the crown, she hisses, her voice low and dangerous. Burn it. Burn it now, and pretend it never arrived. Lord Tyrion Lannister leans back in his chair, a slight smile playing at his lips as he studies his sister's reaction. I'm afraid burning the message won't make the sender disappear, sweet sister. The girl claims to have dragons after all. Perhaps we should take her seriously. Dragons? Cersei's laugh is sharp and bitter. Dragon eggs, more likely. Pretty stones that foolish Dothraki savages worship as magic. No dragon has lived for over a century. And yet, Tyrion muses, pouring himself wine from a crystal decanter. Our spies in Pentos report strange sightings. Flying creatures, roars that shake the ground, ships arriving at Dragonstone under cover of darkness. He takes a sip and regards his sister over the rim of his goblet. Perhaps the impossible has become possible. Grand Maester Pycelle clears his throat nervously. If I may, Your Grace, the ancient texts speak of dragon eggs surviving in various forms. Petrified, are turned to stone by time and neglect, but still containing the essence of dragonfire. There are rituals, blood magic, ways to awaken what has slept. Superstitious nonsense, Cersei snaps, but Tyrion notices the uncertainty creeping into her voice. Even if the girl has some exotic pets, what threat can they pose? She's a child with no army, no gold, no allies. She has a name, Tyrion points out quietly. Targaryen. That name still carries weight in the Seven Kingdoms, despite what our father did to her family. And if she truly has dragons, even young ones, she has something no one has possessed for over a century, the power that built the Iron Throne. Varys, who has remained silent throughout the exchange, finally speaks in his soft, measured tones. My little birds whisper of other developments, Your Grace. Ships flying the Sun and Spear of Dawn have been seen sailing north from Sunspear. House Martell has not forgotten Princess Elaya's fate. Cersei's face pales at the mention of Elia Martell. The Dornish have always been snakes. They'll slither back to their holes when faced with real power. Will they? Tyrion asks, swirling his wine thoughtfully. Dawn remembers, sweet sister. They've waited 17 years for revenge. A Targaryen with dragons might be exactly what they've been waiting for. Meanwhile, 500 miles north, in the Great Hall of Riverrun, Lady Catelyn Stark reads a similar message to her son, Robb, and his assembled bannermen. The young king in the north sits in his high-backed chair, the crown of the Winter Kings heavy on his brow, while grey wind lies at his feet. Another claimant to the Iron Throne, Lord Jason Mallister observes, his weathered face showing skepticism. As if we needed more complications. This one claims to have dragons, Sir Brynden Tully adds, studying the message with tactical interest. If true, that changes the game entirely. Robb runs a hand through his auburn hair, the weight of kingship showing in the lines around his young eyes. "What do we know of this Daenerys Targaryen?" "Daughter of the Mad King," Catelyn replies, her voice carefully neutral. "Born on Dragonstone during Robert's rebellion. She would have been an infant when she fled into exile. Jon Arryn investigated rumors that she had married a Dothraki Carl some years ago. The same Dothraki who destroyed half the Lazarene and sacked 3 free cities?" Lord Rickard Karstark asks grimly. "If she commands barbarian hordes, she's no friend to civilized folk." "She might be an enemy of the Lannisters," Robb says quietly, his blue eyes thoughtful. "The enemy of my enemy." "Is still a dragon," Catelyn warns. "Remember what dragons did to this realm, Robb. The Field of Fire. Harrenhal. Aegon's conquest was built on fire and blood, not justice or mercy." The Blackfish leans forward in his chair. "Aye, but dragons also united 7 kingdoms into one, ended the constant wars between petty kings." He glances meaningfully at his great-nephew. "Perhaps there's wisdom in considering all options, Your Grace." Robb stares at the message for a long moment, weighing possibilities. "Send a raven to Dragonstone," he finally decides. "I want to know more about this Dragon Queen's intentions. If she truly opposes the Lannisters, we may have common cause." In the Water Gardens of Dorne, Prince Doran Martell receives news of the Targaryen return while watching his brother Oberyn practice with his spear in the courtyard below. The Red Viper moves like liquid mercury, his weapon dancing through complex forms as he works up a sweat under the desert sun. "Dragons," Doran murmurs, reading the message a second time. "After all these years, dragons." Oberyn pauses in his practice, looking up at his brother with sharp, dark eyes. "You think it's true?" "The Pentoshi merchants who brought the news seemed genuine in their fear," Doran replies, settling back in his wheeled chair. "They spoke of creatures the size of large cats, breathing fire and flying in formations above ships flying Targaryen colors." "Still children, then," Oberyn observes, wiping sweat from his brow with a silk cloth. "But they'll grow. Dragons always grow." He sets down his spear and joins his brother in the shaded pavilion. "The question is whether the girl is Aegon the Conqueror or Aerys the Mad." "She calls herself Stormborn," Doran notes. "Born in the storm that scattered Robert's fleet, born in the chaos of her family's destruction. Perhaps storms are what she knows best." "Elia's children died in a storm too," Oberyn says quietly, his voice carrying the old pain he never quite manages to hide. "A storm of Lannister swords and royal silence." His hand moves unconsciously to the pommel of his dagger. "If this dragon child offers a chance to settle that debt." "Revenge is a dish best served with overwhelming force," Doran agrees, "but we must be careful. The girl may be another false hope, or another disappointment. How many supposed Targaryen heirs have surfaced over the years? How many have proved to be pretenders seeking glory?" "None of them had dragons," Oberyn points out. "Real or not, the very claim changes everything. If she has even young dragons, she has power that no pretender has possessed." Doran nods slowly, his gaze turning toward the distant mountains that separate Dorne from the rest of Westeros. "Send Orianne to Dragonstone. Let her assess this Dragon Queen in person. If the girl is genuine, if her dragons are real, then perhaps the time for patience is ending." At Storm's End, Stannis Baratheon reads the Targaryen message by the light of a brazier filled with burning coal, the flames casting harsh shadows across his angular face. Beside him, Melisandre of Ashai watches the fire with eyes like burning rubies, seeing visions in the dancing flames that mere mortals cannot perceive. "The spawn of the Mad King returns," Stannis says flatly, crumpling the parchment in his fist. "Another usurper to deal with." "The flames show me strange things," Melisandre murmurs, her voice carrying the accent of distant Ashai. "Ancient powers stirring. Fire made flesh soaring through distant skies." She looks up at Stannis with those impossible red eyes. "This is no mere pretender, Your Grace. The old blood runs strong in her veins, and ancient magics have answered her call. "Magic!" Stannis spits, throwing the crumpled message into the brazier. The parchment catches instantly, burning with flames that seem too bright, too pure. Mummer's tricks and parlour illusions. I'll not be frightened by a child's fairy tales. But Melisandre continues staring into the fire as the message burns, and in the flames she sees wings of shadow and scales of night, red eyes glowing like stars in the darkness. "R'hllor shows me truth, Your Grace. Dragons have returned to the world, and with them comes change. Great change. Then we'll deal with dragons the same way Robert dealt with Targaryens," Stannis declares grimly. "With steel and strength and the justice of the rightful king." "Perhaps," Melisandre says softly, but her eyes remain fixed on the flames, where she sees prophecies unfolding like flower petals in the fire. Or perhaps the Lord of Light has other plans for this dragon queen. Near Bitterbridge, where the massive host of Renly Baratheon has made camp, the youngest Baratheon brother reads the dragon queen's message while reclining on silk cushions in his pavilion. Around him, the flower of southern chivalry drinks wine and laughs at songs, treating the war more like an extended tournament than a campaign for the Iron Throne. "Dragons?" Renly chuckles, passing the message to his wife Margaery. "The beggar queen thinks to frighten us with bedtime stories." Margaery Tyrell reads the message carefully, her dark eyes thoughtful as she considers the implications. Unlike her husband, she sees potential rather than mere pretense. "Perhaps we should not dismiss her too quickly, my lord. If she truly has returned to Dragonstone, if she truly commands unusual creatures—" "She commands Dothraki savages and sells her body to barbarian culls," Loras Tyrell interrupts from his seat nearby, his handsome face showing distaste. "What threat can such a creature pose to civilized knights?" "The threat of legitimacy," Margaery says quietly. "She is the daughter of kings, Loras. Her name carries weight that yours does not." She looks meaningfully at her husband. If she has dragons, even young ones, she has something no claimant has possessed since Aegon conquered Westeros. Renly waves dismissively. Baby dragons, if they exist at all. How much fire can creatures the size of cats breathe? I have 100,000 men and the finest knights in the 7 kingdoms. What care I for exotic pets? But Margaery continues studying the message, her keen political mind already working through possibilities. A Targaryen with dragons represents both threat and opportunity. If the girl proves genuine, allying with her might be wise. If she proves false, destroying her would eliminate a rival claimant. Either way, she bears watching. "Perhaps," she says carefully, "we should send envoys to Dragonstone to assess the truth of these claims." On Dragonstone itself, the sound of steel ringing against steel echoes across the castle's practice yard as Ser Jorah Mormont spars with one of the former Baratheon guards. Daenerys watches from a balcony above, her dragons perched around her, like living gargoyles as they observe the combat below. "The men train well," she observes to Ser Axel Florent, who has become her unofficial castellan. "They seem to have accepted the change in leadership." "Dragons have a way of inspiring loyalty, Your Grace," Ser Axel replies diplomatically, "as does fair treatment and regular meals." A commotion at the harbour draws their attention, and Daenerys sees a sleek galley approaching under the banner of House Martell. The ship moves with the grace of a water snake, its orange sails billowing in the morning wind as it navigates between the sea stacks that guard Dragonstone's approach. "The Dornish delegation," Jorah says, joining them on the balcony. "Princess Arianne Martell herself, if our intelligence is correct." Within the hour, Daenerys stands in the great hall of Dragonstone, receiving her first formal visitor since reclaiming her ancestral seat. Princess Arianne Martell is everything the stories say. Beautiful, confident and dangerous, with the dark eyes and olive skin of dawn. She approaches the throne with fluid grace, flanked by 2 guards bearing the sun and spear of her house. "Your Grace," Arianne says, offering a curtsy that manages to be both respectful and subtly mocking. Dawn welcomes the return of House Targaryen to Westeros. "Princess Arianne," Daenerys replies from the throne, carved with dragon heads. "Your father's message spoke of mutual interests. I'm curious to hear what Dawn offers." "Vengeance," Arianne says simply. "Justice for crimes too long unpunished. The blood debt owed for Princess Elia and her children." Her dark eyes harden as she speaks. Dawn has waited 17 years for the chance to repay the Lannisters for what they did during the sack of King's Landing. And in exchange? 10,000 spears, the finest light cavalry in Westeros, gold to hire sellswords and buy ships. Arianna's smile is sharp as a blade, and most importantly, legitimacy. A Dawn's support will prove to the other kingdoms that you are no mere pretender. Daenerys considers this offer, weighing the political implications. Dawn as an ally would provide both military strength and symbolic validation. But it would also mark her as an enemy of House Lannister from the very beginning. "You asked me to declare war on the most powerful house in Westeros," she observes. "The most powerful house in a kingdom tearing itself apart," Arianne counters. "Tywin Lannister fights on multiple fronts, against the Starks in the Riverlands, against the Baratheons in the south. His gold finances his wars, but gold cannot be everywhere at once." As if summoned by their conversation, Drogon swoops through one of the Great Hall's high windows, landing on the floor between Daenerys and her visitor. The black dragon is now clearly larger than any cat, approaching the size of a small dog, and his presence fills the hall with the scent of sulphur and smoke. Arianne takes an involuntary step backward, her composure cracking for the first time as she stares at the living dragon. "By the 7, she whispers. "They're real." Daenerys rises from the throne and approaches Drogon, who nuzzles against her hand like an affectionate pet. "Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate," she says, gesturing for Sir Axel to bring a practice sword. The Castellan approaches nervously, offering an old blade that has seen better days. Daenerys takes the steel and holds it out toward her dragon. "Dracarys!" she commands in High Valyrian. Drogon's roar fills the great hall as a gout of flame erupts from his small jaws, all engulfing the sword in orange fire. The steel glows cherry red, then white hot, before beginning to droop and melt like candle wax. Within moments, the blade has been reduced to molten metal that drips onto the stone floor with sharp, hissing sounds. The silence that follows is broken only by the sound of metal cooling and Arianne's rapid breathing. The Dornish princess stares at the puddle of steel, then at the dragon, then at the young queen who commands such power. "The blood of old Valyria runs true," Daenerys says quietly, "as does the fire." She meets Arianne's eyes across the hall. "Dawn offers vengeance, and I offer dragons. Perhaps we can find common ground." Arianne composes herself with visible effort, her training as a princess reasserting itself. "I believe we can, Your Grace. When can Prince Doran expect your answer?" "You may carry it back yourself," Daenerys decides. "Tell your father that House Targaryen accepts Dawn's friendship. The alliance our families once knew will be renewed." She gestures toward the molten steel cooling on the floor. "And remind him that dragons have returned to the world. The game has changed." That evening, as the sun sets over Dragonstone and Arianne's ship prepares for the journey back to Sunspear, Daenerys stands once more in the chamber of the painted table. Her dragons perch around the room like living decorations, their eyes glowing in the candlelight as she studies the map of Westeros spread before her. "The pieces are moving," she murmurs to Ser Jorah, who stands at her shoulder. "Dawn will declare for us. The North might be convinced to treat. Even some in King's Landing question Joffrey's legitimacy. And the others will unite against us," Jorah warns. Stannis, Renly, perhaps even young Stark if we threaten northern independence. You'll be seen as another conqueror, another threat to the established order." Daenerys traces her finger along the painted coastlines, following the routes armies might take in the coming war. "Let them unite," she says, with quiet confidence. Aegon the Conqueror faced 7 kingdoms and conquered them all. I face 5 claimants, and I have what he had, dragons. She looks up at Drogon, perched on a wooden beam above their heads. They'll learn what my ancestors knew. The realm belongs to the dragon. Outside the windows, storm clouds gather once more over the narrow sea, and lightning flickers in the darkness like promises of the fire to come. Chapter 4. Fire and Blood Diplomacy. The morning sun casts long shadows across the chamber of the painted table as Princess Arianne Martell spreads documents before Daenerys like a merchant displaying fine wares. Maps of Dawn, troop manifests, and shipping ledgers cover the carved representation of Westeros, transforming Aegon's conquest table into a planning board for a new war. 10,000 spears, Arianne repeats, her finger tracing the mountain passes that guard Dawn's borders. The finest light cavalry in the 7 kingdoms, trained to fight in desert heat and mountain cold alike. They can move faster than heavy horse and strike where enemies least expect. Daenerys studies the numbers carefully, her violet eyes moving from document to document as she calculates the strategic implications. Beside the table, the Drogon perches on a wooden stand, carved to resemble a dragon's claw, his black scales gleaming in the morning light. The dragon has grown noticeably since their arrival at Dragonstone, now the size of a large hunting hound rather than a cat. "And in exchange?" she asks, though she suspects she knows the answer. "Alliance through marriage," Arianne says smoothly. "My cousin Quentyn Martell is heir to Sunspear after my father. A union between House Targaryen and House Martell would bind our kingdoms together, as they were in the days of the Dragon Kings." Ser Jorah, standing guard near the chamber's entrance, shifts uncomfortably at the mention of marriage. Daenerys notices his reaction, but keeps her expression neutral as she considers the proposal. "Prince Quentyn," she muses. "I know little of him." "A good man," Arianne assures her. "Was educated at Ironwood under the tutelage of Lord Anders, trained in arms and letters both. He understands duty and honor, and he knows the value of alliances." She pauses, studying Daenerys' face. "He also understands that a queen must rule as well as reign. The marriage would be one of partnership, not dominance." Daenerys walks to the great windows that look out over Blackwater Bay, watching fishing boats move between the sea stacks like water dancers, navigating a complex performance. The offer is politically sound. Dawn's support would legitimize her claim and provide military strength. But marriage means the end of freedom, the beginning of compromise. "I will consider Prince Quentyn's suit," she says finally. "But understand that I must meet with him before any agreements are reached. Do dragons choose their own mates?" Arianne's smile suggests she expected this response. "Of course, Your Grace. I've already sent word to Sunspear. Quentyn will sail within the fortnight." Their negotiation is interrupted by Sir Axel Florent, who enters with a troubled expression. "Your Grace, there's a ship approaching under the 7-pointed star. The captain claims to carry an envoy from the Faith." Daenerys exchanges glances with Jorah, both remembering the intelligence reports about the growing power of the Faith militant in King's Landing. "Bring this envoy to the throne room," she decides, "but keep guards close." Within the hour, Daenerys sits upon the dragon throne of Dragonstone, flanked by her blood riders and watched over by all 3 of her dragons. As the Faith's envoy proves to be a surprising figure, not some grizzled septon, but a young man with intelligent brown eyes and the soft hands of a scholar. "Your Grace," he says, offering a deep bow. "I am Septon Luceon, speaking for His High Holiness in King's Landing. The Faith has watched your return with great interest." "The Faith serves the 7," Daenerys replies carefully. I am told they favor established authority. The faith serves the gods, your grace, not the corruption of kings. Luceon's voice carries surprising steel. His High Holiness has observed the excesses of the Lannister regime with growing concern. The Queen's relationship with her brother, the bastard king's cruelty, the gold that flows into faith, coffers even as the small folk starve. Daenerys leans forward slightly. And what does His High Holiness propose? Recognition, Luceon says simply. The faith has influence in King's Landing that gold cannot buy. The poor districts, the skilled craftsmen, even some nobles who remember the old ways. If your grace were to promise protection for the faith's rights, restoration of the faith militant, and justice for the realm's sins. He spreads his hands meaningfully. The faith might find its prayers answered by supporting the rightful queen. The implications are staggering. An alliance with the faith would give her influence inside King's Landing itself, among the very people the Lannisters claim to rule. But it would also mean accepting religious oversight of her reign. The faith militant was disbanded by my ancestor Maegor, she points out. A mistake that led to corruption and decay, Luceon replies. The realm needs both sword and spirit to cleanse it of sin. Before Daenerys can respond, another commotion arises in the courtyard. This time, it's Ser Jorah who brings word of an unexpected arrival. A ship flying no banners, your grace, he reports. But the passenger claims to be from the Wall, says he carries urgent word about threats beyond the realm of men. The passenger proves to be perhaps the most unlikely visitor yet to reach Dragonstone. A soft, round young man in the black of the Night's Watch, his pale face marked by exhaustion and fear. Samwell Tarly stumbles into the throne room like a man fleeing nightmares, his eyes wide with terror that no amount of southern comfort can dispel. Your grace, he gasps, dropping to one knee with obvious relief. Samwell Tarly of the Night's Watch. I bear word from Lord Commander Mormont about dangers that threaten all the living. Jorah steps forward at the mention of his father's name, his weathered face showing sudden concern. My father sent you? What dangers? Sam pulls a sealed letter from his black cloak with trembling hands. The dead walk beyond the wall, your grace. Ancient evils stir in the frozen waste. The Watch has fought creatures of legend, wights that feel no pain, others that command ice and shadow. Lord Commander Mormont believes the long night is coming again. The throne room falls silent, except for the sound of dragon wings, as Rhaegal and Viserion shift restlessly on their perches. Daenerys takes the letter, breaking the seal of the Night's Watch with growing unease. Lord Commander Mormont writes of an army of the dead, she says, after reading, of ancient enemies returning to the world. He asks for aid, for men and supplies to man the wall. The realms of men squabble for crowns while true darkness gathers in the north, Sam adds, his voice gaining strength as he speaks of his duty. The Watch has stood guard for thousands of years, but our numbers dwindle. We need help, your grace. All the help we can find. Arianne looks skeptical. Stories of ice demons and walking corpses? These sound like tales to frighten children. Dragons were tales to frighten children until yesterday, Daenerys observes quietly, glancing at her perched creatures. If the impossible has returned to the world, perhaps all impossibilities must be considered. That evening, as Septon Luceon and Samwell Tarly are shown to guest chambers, Daenerys holds council in her private solar. Maps and documents cover every surface, and the air is thick with the scent of dragon as her 3 companions rest nearby. 3 offers in one day, Jorah observes. Dornish spears, faith support, and northern warnings. Each pulls us in different directions. Or perhaps they all point toward the same conclusion, Daenerys replies, studying a letter that arrived by Raven during the afternoon's meetings. This message from Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock suggests he's taking my return seriously. He's recalling troops from the Riverlands and offering pardons to any who bring him my head. The old lion shows his claws, Arianne notes. Father said Tywin Lannister never forgives and never forgets. If he's moving against you directly, then we need allies more than ever, Daenerys finishes. The Faith offers influence in the capital. Dawn offers military strength. The North offers legitimacy through shared enemies. She walks to the window where Viserion perches, his cream and gold scales pale in the moonlight. And if this Samwell speaks truth, we may need every ally against threats greater than any throne. You're considering his request? Jorah asks with surprise. I'm considering the implications, she corrects. If ancient evils truly stir in the North, then uniting the Seven Kingdoms becomes more than ambition. It becomes necessity. The realm must stand together against such threats. A soft knock at the solar door interrupts their discussion. Sir Axel enters with urgent news written across his weathered face. Your Grace, there's been an incident in the harbour. Lannister agents attempted to fire our ships. The dragons... He pauses, searching for words. The dragons defended themselves. They rush to the battlements overlooking the harbour, where the evidence of dragon wrath smoulders in the night. A small boat burns in the water, its hull cracked and steaming. Nearby, Drogon circles above the waves, while Rhaegal and Viserion perch on the harbour walls like guardian statues. 4 men with torches and oil, Sir Axel explains. They approached under cover of darkness, hoping to fire the ships and strand us here. Drogon sensed the threat first, attacked before they could reach our vessels. Daenerys watches the burning boat with mixed emotions. Her dragons had protected her fleet, proved their value as guardians, but they had also killed men, had taken lives without her direct command. Any survivors? She asks. 1, Axel confirms. Badly burned, but alive. He confirmed they were Lannister agents, paid to sabotage your fleet. The game grows deadly, Arianne observes. Tywin Lannister moves from dismissal to direct action. Then we must move faster than he expects, Daenerys decides. Sir Jorah, prepare for departure. I want you to sail north within the week. North Khaleesi? To treat with Robb Stark, she explains. Offer him northern independence in exchange for alliance against our common enemies. If the Lannisters want war, they'll face it on multiple fronts. The next morning, Daenerys stands in the dragon courtyard of Dragonstone, watching her 3 children hunt rats among the ancient stones. They've grown remarkably in the week since leaving Essos. Drogon is now the size of a large dog, while his brothers are close behind. More importantly, they're learning to hunt cooperatively, working together to corner prey before delivering killing strikes. They're magnificent, Arianne breathes, watching Rhaegal pin a struggling rat with his talons before finishing it with a precise bite. In a year or 2, they'll be large enough to ride. Sooner than that, perhaps, Daenerys replies, calling Viserion to her with a gesture. The cream and gold dragon comes immediately, nuzzling against her hand like an affectionate cat. Dragons grow quickly when well fed and loved. And when they sense war coming, Sir Jorah adds grimly, preparing his travelling gear for the journey north. Dragons have always thrived in times of conflict. That afternoon, as Jorah's ship disappears beyond the horizon, carrying offers of alliance to the king in the north, Daenerys receives another message by Raven. This one bears the direwolf seal of House Stark, but the contents are unexpected. Lady Catelyn Stark writes from Riverrun, she tells her assembled advisers. She warns that Tywin Lannister has sent word to his bannermen, calling in all debts and demanding full mobilization. The Westerlands prepare for war. How many men can Tywin field? Arianne asks. Perhaps 60,000 if he strips every holdfast and castle, Daenerys replies, studying intelligence reports. But they'll be scattered across multiple fronts, some holding Casterly Rock, others guarding the gold mines, and still more needed to protect his supply lines. And we have Dawn's 10,000, plus whatever force I can gather here. Perhaps 15,000 total. She looks up from the documents with determination blazing in her violet eyes. But we have dragons, and dragons are force multipliers that no amount of gold can buy. That evening, as storm clouds gather once more over the narrow sea, Daenerys climbs to the highest tower of Dragonstone, where her dragons roost for the night. Drogon greets her with a rumbling purr, his red eyes reflecting the lightning that flickers in the distance. The game accelerates, she tells him, stroking his warm scales. Soon we'll leave this island and test ourselves against the powers of Westeros. She looks out over the dark waters toward the lights of the mainland. Aegon conquered 7 kingdoms with 3 dragons. I face 5 kings with 3 dragons of my own. Above them, thunder rolls across the sky like the roar of ancient worms, and lightning illuminates the ancient fortress where the Targaryen conquest began 3 centuries before. The blood of the dragon has returned to Dragonstone, and the realm will never be the same. In the distance, sails appear on the horizon, more ships approaching under various banners as word of the Dragon Queen's return spreads across the known world. Some carry allies, others enemies, all drawn by the ancient power that has awakened in the ancient seat of kings. The dragons sense the approaching storm, both the literal tempest gathering overhead and the metaphorical one building across the 7 kingdoms. They spread their wings and cry out in unison, their voices carrying across the water, like herald calls, announcing the return of legend to the world of men. Chapter 5. The Battle of the Gullet. Dawn breaks grey and cold over Dragonstone, the ancient fortress shrouded in mist that rises from the dark waters of Blackwater Bay. From the Sea Dragon Tower, the sentries sound their horns in alarm as the fog begins to part, revealing what lies beyond the protective sea stacks that guard the island's approaches. Ships, dozens of them, arranged in perfect battle formation, like pieces on a Sivas board. The royal fleet of Stannis Baratheon fills the horizon, their hulls black against the pale morning sky, their sails bearing the crowned stag of House Baratheon. War galleys and swift longships move with military precision, cutting through the choppy waters as they approach Dragonstone's harbour. Daenerys stands on the battlements, her silver hair whipping in the salt wind as she watches the approaching fleet through a myrish far eye. Beside her, Ser Jorah counts the ships with a sailor's practiced eye, his weathered face growing grimmer with each vessel identified. 60 ships at least, he reports. War galleys in the van, supply ships trailing behind. The Fury leads them. Stannis Baratheon's flagship. His voice carries grudging respect for the tactical display. He's brought his entire fleet. All to claim a single island? Daenerys asks, studying the formations through her spyglass. All to claim the dragons on that island, Jorah corrects grimly. Word of your return has reached every corner of Westeros. Stannis knows that whoever controls dragons controls the realm's future. From the harbour comes the sound of horns and shouting as Dragonstone's small fleet prepares for battle. Their 5 ships seem pathetically few against Stannis' armada, but Daenerys feels no despair. High above the castle, 3 shapes circle through the morning mist, her dragons, grown large enough now that their wingspans cast visible shadows on the water below. Your Grace, Sir Axel Florent appears at her elbow, his armour gleaming despite the grey light. King Stannis requests parley. His herald awaits your response. Daenerys lowers her spyglass, considering. Stannis Baratheon, rigid, unforgiving, but honourable in his own way. A man who follows law and precedent above all else, even when it leads to destruction. Bring his herald to the throne room, she decides. Let Stannis speak his piece. The herald proves to be a weathered knight in Baratheon colours, his tabard bearing the flaming heart of the Lord of Light alongside the crowned stag. He delivers Stannis' message in a voice trained for battlefield commands, each word precise and unwavering. His Grace Stannis of the House Baratheon, first of his name, rightful king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, commands the Pretender, styling herself, queen to surrender immediately. Submit to lawful authority, renounce false claims, and his grace may show mercy. Resist and face the consequences of defying the true king. Daenerys sits upon the dragon throne, carved from the living rock of dragonstone centuries ago, her 3 dragons perched around her like living decorations. Drogon, now the size of a large hound, regards the herald with red eyes that seem to burn with inner fire. "Return to your king," she replies, her voice carrying the authority of old Valyria. "Tell Stannis Baratheon that Daenerys Stormborn acknowledges no king but herself. This is my ancestral seat, held by right of birth and blood. If he wishes to test that claim, let him try." The herald's composure cracks slightly as Viserion spreads his cream and gold wings, the membrane translucent in the throne room's torchlight. "Your Grace speaks of dragons as if they were real creatures rather than trained lizards." "Dracarys," Daenerys commands softly in High Valyrian. Rhaegal responds instantly, breathing a gout of green flame that illuminates the entire throne room. The fire roars past the herald, close enough to singe his eyebrows, and the smell of sulphur fills the ancient hall. "Are those real enough for King Stannis?" she asks as the herald stumbles backward, his face pale with shock. Within the hour, signal flags flash between Stannis' ships as they move into attack formation. But before the assault begins, something unexpected happens on the flagship's deck. A woman emerges from the cabin, tall, beautiful, terrible, clothed in flowing red silk that seems to burn in the morning light. Melisandre of Ashai raises her arms toward Dragonstone, and her voice carries across the water like the whisper of flames. She speaks in a language older than Valyrian, calling upon powers that predate the 7 kingdoms, summoning the might of R'hllor against the ancient magic that has awakened in dragon wings. "Behold the truth of the Lord of Light," her voice echoes over the waves. "Let false dragons burn before the true fire of righteousness." The ritual reaches its crescendo as Melisandre casts something into a brazier that burns impossibly bright on the ship's deck. Crimson flames leap skyward, reaching toward the circling dragons like grasping fingers of divine wrath. But the dragons do not burn. They do not flee. Instead, Drogon descends from the heights with a roar that shakes the very foundations of Dragonstone. His black wings spread wide as he circles the fleet. His brothers follow, and their combined cries sound like the screams of dying gods. "Dragons are fire made flesh," Daenerys murmurs from the battlements, watching Melisandre's flames sputter and die. "You cannot burn fire, or witch." The failure of the Red Priestess's magic sends visible shock through Stannis' fleet. Sailors who had expected divine intervention instead witness their enemies soaring overhead, untouched by the powers they trusted to protect them. Stannis himself stands on the deck of the Fury, his jaw clenched as he watches his advantage evaporate. Beside him, Sir Davos Seaworth studies the dragons with the calculating eye of a veteran smuggler who has seen enough impossible things to take them seriously. "Your Grace," Davos says carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Those creatures are larger than the reports suggested, and they move with purpose. This isn't some mummer's trick." "They're dragons, Davos," Stannis replies flatly. "I can see that much. But they're young dragons, little more than flying beasts. We have ships and men and the righteousness of our cause. And they have fire," Davos points out. "Fire that burns ships very efficiently." But Stannis has committed himself to this course, and commitment is perhaps his greatest strength and weakness. The signal flags go up, horns sound across the water, and the assault begins. The royal fleet moves forward in disciplined formation, catapults and scorpions training on the circling dragons, while ram ships prepare to assault Dragonstone's small harbour. For a moment, it seems like conventional warfare might prevail. Weight of numbers and superior naval tactics overcoming exotic threats. Then Daenerys appears on the battlements with a length of chain in her hands, calling to her dragons in the ancient tongue of old Valyria. "Naik Mazigons Eldrazote, I come." "But dragons," Drogon responds first, swooping down to hover beside the tower where his mother stands. The improvised saddle strapped to his back is crude but functional, designed for a rider who trusts her mount completely. Daenerys swings herself onto the black dragon's shoulders, settling between the wing joints where scales provide natural grips. "Soves!" she commands. "Fly!" The sight of a dragon rider takes to the skies for the first time in over a century sends shockwaves through both fleets. Stannis' sailors stare in amazement and terror as the impossible becomes reality before their eyes. On Dragonstone's walls, defenders cheer at the sight of their queen astride a living legend. But Daenerys has no time for dramatics. She guides Drogon in a wide circle around Stannis' fleet, studying their formations and identifying key targets. But behind her, Rhaegal and Viserion follow their mother and brother, instinct and affection binding them together in the dance of war. "The flagship," she decides, pointing toward the Fury where Stannis' banners fly proudly. "But carefully. We need prisoners, not corpses." Drogon understands, diving toward the royal flagship with wings tucked for speed. The dragon's roar precedes them, and sailors scatter across the deck as the shadow of wings passes overhead. Daenerys calls out the attack command she has practiced for weeks. "Dracarys." Dragonfire engulfs the Fury's mainsail, sending burning canvas cascading onto the deck below. But this is controlled burning, precise destruction that targets equipment rather than men. Drogon pulls up sharply, climbing back into the sky as archers loose arrows that fall harmlessly short of their airborne target. Rhaegal follows with an attack on the supply ships, his bronze-green flames setting casks and rigging ablaze. Viserion targets the catapult ships, destroying siege engines with surgical precision. The dragons work together like dancers following ancient choreography, each strike calculated to cripple rather than massacre. "Pull back!" Davos shouts over the chaos on the Fury's deck. "Your Grace, we need to pull back before they burn us to the waterline." But Stannis stands firm, even as his flagship smoulders around him. "Scorpions!" he commands. "Bring those beasts down." The giant crossbows swivel toward the circling dragons, their massive bolts designed to pierce ship hulls and castle walls. The first volley fills the air with spinning death, and one bolt passes close enough to Viserion to tear scales from his wing membrane. Daenerys feels her dragon's pain through their bond, and her own fury rises in response. These are her children, her companions, the last dragons in the world. No one threatens them without consequences. "Enough mercy," she whispers, guiding Drogon toward the scorpion ships. "Dracarys." This time, the dragonfire is not controlled. Orange flame washes over the nearest war galley, setting everything combustible ablaze within seconds. Men scream and leap overboard as their ship becomes a floating pyre, the smell of burning wood and melting pitch carrying across the water. The sight of true dragon wrath breaks the discipline of Stannis' fleet. For ships begin pulling away from the battle line as captains choose survival over glory. Even veteran sailors who have faced storms and pirates find themselves overwhelmed by the primal terror of being hunted from above by creatures of legend. "Your Grace!" Davos grabs Stannis' arm as another ship erupts in flames. "We've lost 6 vessels already, and the dragons show no signs of tiring. If we stay, we'll lose the entire fleet." Stannis watches his proud armada scatter before 3 young dragons and their determined rider. Everything in him rebels against retreat, against acknowledging defeat at the hands of a girl with exotic pets. But he is also a pragmatist, and pragmatists know when to cut their losses. "Signal the retreat," he commands through gritted teeth. All ships withdraw to Storm's End. The Battle of the Gullet ends as suddenly as it began. Stannis' surviving ships flee southward, leaving behind burning hulks and floating debris where proud vessels once sailed. Daenerys circles overhead on Drogon, watching her first major victory with mixed emotions. She has proven dragon power in battle, but she has also killed men who were only following their king's orders. "The price of ruling," she murmurs, guiding her dragon back toward Dragonstone's battlements. "Every crown is bought with blood." The aftermath brings unexpected benefits. 3 of Stannis' ships, too damaged to flee but not destroyed, surrender to Dragonstone's small fleet. Their crews, faced with a choice between drowning and serving the Dragon Queen, choose pragmatism over loyalty. By sunset, Daenerys has gained 60 experienced sailors and 3 functional warships to add to her growing navy. More importantly, she has gained something that cannot be bought or built: reputation. Word of the Dragon Queen's victory will spread across Westeros faster than any raven can fly. Every sailor who witnessed the battle will tell the tale in taverns and brothels, and each telling will grow larger in the imagination. That evening, Daenerys stands in the chamber of the Painted Table, studying reports from her new prisoners. Sir Davos Seaworth, captured when his ship ran aground during the retreat, proves surprisingly cooperative when questioned about Stannis' plans. King Stannis will return to Storm's End, the Onion Knight tells her honestly. He'll lick his wounds and plan his next move, but he won't forget this defeat, Your Grace, and Stannis Baratheon never forgets anything. And what would you counsel him to do? She asks, genuinely curious about the opinion of a man known for his practical wisdom. Davos considers the question carefully. If I were still his advisor, I'd tell him to negotiate. You've proven your dragons are real and dangerous. Any future battle will cost him ships and men he can't afford to lose. He meets her eyes directly. But Stannis doesn't negotiate from positions of weakness. He'll find another way to test your strength. And you, Sir Davos, will you test my strength as well? The former smuggler laughs ruefully. I'm a practical man, Your Grace. I've seen what your dragons can do to ships, and I've spent too many years at sea to ignore the evidence of my own eyes. He pauses, then adds quietly, If you'll have me, I offer my service, or the realm needs unity, not more war between kings. By the time the moon rises over Dragonstone, Daenerys has gained more than ships and men. She has gained her first major military victory, her first taste of ruling through strength rather than just birthright. The dragons circle overhead in the darkness, their forms barely visible against the stars, but their presence felt by every person on the island. The Game of Thrones has seen its first dragon victory in over a century. The other claimants, Joffrey, Renly, Robb, and even defeated Stannis, must now recalculate their strategies in a world where dragons have returned to the battlefield. But Daenerys knows this is only the beginning. Stannis' attack was a test, a probe to measure her strength. The real war for the Iron Throne still lies ahead, and she has shown her hand perhaps sooner than she intended. Standing on the battlements with her dragons perched around her like living gargoyles, she looks toward the distant lights of the mainland and the 7 kingdoms that await her claim. The Battle of the Gullet is won, but the war for Westeros has only just begun. Tomorrow we plan the next move, she tells her dragons softly. Tonight, we celebrate being alive and victorious. Above them, storm clouds gather once more over the narrow sea, and lightning illuminates the ancient fortress where dragon queens have always plotted the conquest of kingdoms. The blood of old Valyria has proven itself in battle, and the realm trembles at the sound of wings in the night. Chapter 6. Dornish Spears and Northern Wolves. The morning after the Battle of the Gullet brings unexpected visitors to Dragonstone's harbour. A fleet of ships flying the sun, and spear of House Martell appears on the horizon, their orange sails bright against the grey sky. Unlike Stannis' warships, these vessels come in peace, their approach deliberate and unhurried as they navigate between the sea stacks that guard the ancient Targaryen stronghold. From the battlements, Daenerys watches the Dornish fleet with satisfaction tinged by surprise. She had expected Prince Quentyn, perhaps with a small escort. Instead, the lead ship bears the personal banner of Prince Doran Martell himself. The ruling Prince of Dorne has come to Dragonstone in person. Bold of him, Ser Jorah observes, studying the approaching vessels through a spyglass. Doran Martell hasn't left Sunspear in years, not since his gout worsened. This alliance must matter greatly to him. Or he wants to see the dragons himself, Daenerys replies, watching Drogon and his brothers circle overhead like living banners. Wise men don't commit 10,000 spears based on rumors alone. The Dornish delegation that disembarks at Dragonstone's harbour is impressive by any measure. Prince Doran himself moves slowly, aided by a wheeled chair that his guards carry up from the ships, but his presence commands respect. Beside him walks a man who can only be Oberyn Martell. The Red Viper moves with lethal grace, his dark eyes taking in every detail of the castle's defences. But it's the soldiers who truly demonstrate Dornish commitment. 1,000 spears march in formation up from the harbour, with their equipment showing the practical efficiency of troops who have spent years patrolling dangerous borders. These are not ceremonial guards, but seasoned fighters, ready for immediate deployment. "Your Grace," Prince Doran says, as his chair is positioned before Dragonstone's throne. "Dawn comes to renew old bonds and forge new ones." His voice carries the authority of a man who has ruled one of the 7 kingdoms for decades, but his eyes show genuine respect as they study the young woman who commands dragons. "Prince Doran," Daenerys replies from the dragon throne, "your presence honors House Targaryen. Dragonstone welcomes the Prince of Dawn. My daughter spoke truly of what she witnessed here," Doran continues, glancing at the dragons perched around the throne room. "The blood of old Valyria runs strong in your veins, as does the fire." He pauses, then speaks with formal gravity. "House Martell pledges its spears to House Targaryen, as our ancestors did for Aegon the Conqueror. We seek justice for Princess Aelia and her children, and revenge upon those who murdered them. The formal alliance brings immediate practical benefits." Doran's advisors spread detailed maps across the painted table, showing Dornish supply routes and defensive positions. More importantly, they bring intelligence about the other kingdoms gathered from years of careful observation. "The Reach grows restless," Oberyn reports, his fingers tracing roads on the map. "Renly Baratheon's host camps at Bitterbridge, but there are tensions between his supporters. The Tyrells grow impatient with his delays, and some lords question whether he truly intends to press his claim or merely enjoys playing at kingship." "And Tywin Lannister?" Daenerys asks, studying the western regions of the map. "Recalls forces from across the Westerlands," Doran replies. "Our spies report significant troop movements toward Casterly Rock. He masses strength, but seems uncertain where to deploy it. The old lion faces threats from multiple directions and cannot be strong everywhere at once." Their planning session is interrupted by the arrival of another ship, this one bearing northern colours. Daenerys recognizes the vessel immediately, the same ship that carried Ser Jorah north to treat with Robb Stark weeks earlier. Her excitement mixes with apprehension as she considers what response the king in the north might have sent. Jorah climbs the steps to Dragonstone's great hall with measured pace, his weathered face revealing little of the negotiations he has conducted. He carries a leather satchel bearing the direwolf seal of House Stark, and his manner suggests the contents are significant. "Khaleesi," he begins, using the Dothraki title that has become her preference in private councils. "I bring word from His Grace Robb Stark, King in the North." The formal language suggests good news, but Jorah's expression remains carefully neutral as he produces a letter written on fine parchment in the flowing script of a Maester. Daenerys reads it aloud for the benefit of her assembled advisors. "To Daenerys Targaryen, called Stormborn, the North acknowledges your return to Westeros and your legitimate claim to the Iron Throne. We share common enemies in House Lannister and common desire to see justice done for the wrongs committed during their rule. However, Northern independence remains sacred to our people, earned through blood and sacrifice." She pauses, noting the careful diplomatic language that manages to be both respectful and firm. Robb Stark writes like a king, not a suppliant. "The North proposes alliance based on mutual benefit," she continues. "Recognition of Northern independence, in exchange for military cooperation against the Lannisters. As proof of good faith, we ask that you assist in recovering Sansa Stark and Arya Stark from Lannister captivity in King's Landing. Succeed in this, and the North will march beside the dragons when the time comes to bring down the usurper's line. The terms are reasonable, and even generous by the standards of royal diplomacy. Robb offers genuine partnership rather than submission, and his request regarding his sisters shows both political wisdom and personal honor. Clever, Prince Doran observes. The young wolf binds alliance to a rescue mission that serves both honor and strategy. If you succeed, you gain northern legitimacy and remove Lannister hostages. If you fail, he loses nothing. And if I succeed, I prove that dragons can accomplish what conventional forces cannot, Daenerys adds, understanding the deeper implications. Every lord in Westeros will know that I can reach into the heart of the enemy's strength and take what I choose. The risk is considerable, Jorah warns. King's Landing is heavily defended, and the Lannisters will expect attempts to rescue the Stark girls. It could be a trap designed to lure you into vulnerable position. Before Daenerys can respond, another commotion arises in the courtyard below. A raven has arrived, but not just any raven. This bird bears the golden rose of House Tyrell, and its message sends shockwaves through the assembled council. Sir Axel Florent brings the news with obvious excitement. Your Grace, word from the Reach. King Renly Baratheon is dead. The silence that follows is profound. Renly, the charming youngest Baratheon brother who commanded the largest army in Westeros, dead without warning or apparent cause. The political implications ripple outward like stones cast in still water. How? Oberyn asks sharply. Battle, poison, accident. The message speaks of shadow and sorcery, Axel replies, his voice uncertain. But witnesses claim he was killed by a creature of darkness in his own tent, with no mortal weapon involved. His entire court is in chaos, unsure whether to blame supernatural forces or more mundane assassins. Daenerys exchanges glances with Prince Doran, both recognizing opportunity within tragedy. Renly's death leaves the largest army in Westeros without leadership, and the Reach without clear direction. Margaery Tyrell, she muses. Renly's queen, now his widow. Young, beautiful, and suddenly very available for new alliances. As if summoned by her words, another raven arrives within the hour, this one bearing a message written in a woman's delicate hand. The sender identifies herself as Lady Olenna Tyrell, speaking for her granddaughter and the House of Roses. The Queen of Thorns, Doran identifies with a slight smile. What, perhaps the shrewdest political mind in Westeros. If she reaches out to you, the offer will be worth considering. The message is brief but loaded with implication. Young queens must look after one another in these dangerous times. Perhaps Margaery might visit Dragonstone to discuss matters of mutual interest. Gardens grow best when tended by experienced hands. She wants to see the dragons, Daenerys concludes, and to assess whether I'm a suitable replacement for Renly in their political calculations. The afternoon brings a flurry of activity as alliance terms are formalized and military plans begin to take shape. In the castle's practice yard, an extraordinary sight unfolds as Oberyn Martell demonstrates Dornish fighting techniques to a fascinated audience of Dothraki blood riders. "To your weight on the back foot," Oberyn instructs Jogo, showing him how to hold the Dornish spear. The weapon's reach is your advantage, but only if you maintain distance and mobility. Jogo, accustomed to the curved arakh and mounted combat, struggles initially with the longer weapon's balance. But the Dothraki learn quickly, and soon the practice yard rings with the clash of spear against spear as blood riders and Dornish soldiers train together. They adapt well, Aggo observes in Dothraki, watching his fellow blood rider master a new technique. These Dornish fight like us, quick strikes, then away before the enemy can respond. Different weapons, same principles, Oberyn agrees in accented Dothraki, surprising the blood riders with his linguistic knowledge. Speed and skill defeat heavy armor and brute strength. Above them, Of the dragons watch the combat training with what seems like intelligent interest. Drogon has grown noticeably since the battle with Stannis, now the size of a large mastiff, with wings that can carry him in sustained flight. His brothers are close behind, their development accelerated by regular feeding and the freedom to hunt in Dragonstone's waters. That evening, Daenerys holds formal court in the Great Hall, establishing the governmental structures that will be necessary as her coalition grows. Representatives from 3 kingdoms now stand before the Dragon Throne: Dornish princes, northern envoys, and even some former Baratheon men who chose to remain after Stannis' defeat. "Justice," she declares, hearing the first case brought before her royal authority. For the foundation of all legitimate rule is justice fairly applied. The cases are varied: disputes between her new followers, questions of supply and command authority, requests for compensation for ships lost in battle. Each decision sets precedent for future judgments, and Daenerys feels the weight of actual rulership settling on her shoulders. "The dragons are impressive," Prince Doran observes quietly during a break in the proceedings. "But this is equally important. Showing that you can govern as well as conquer, that you understand law as well as war." "My ancestors ruled for 3 centuries," she replies. "I intend to learn from their successes and their failures." As night falls over Dragonstone, Daenerys climbs to the highest tower, where her dragons roost in the ancient chambers once used by Targaryen kings. But the view from here encompasses all of Blackwater Bay, and on clear nights the lights of King's Landing are visible in the distance. "Soon," she tells Drogon, stroking his warm scales as he settles beside her, "soon we test ourselves against the strongest fortress in Westeros." The black dragon rumbles in response, a sound that carries both affection and anticipation. Below them, the combined camps of Dornish spears and northern envoys spread across Dragonstone's courtyards, while ships from 3 kingdoms ride at anchor in the harbour. "A rescue mission first," she continues, thinking of Sansa and Arya Stark trapped in the Red Keep. "But more than a rescue, a demonstration. Let the realm see that no castle is beyond the reach of dragons." Outside the tower windows, storm clouds gather once more over the narrow sea, but these seem less ominous than promising. The weather that gave her the name Stormborn might serve her purposes once again, providing cover for the most audacious assault attempted since Aegon's conquest. The pieces are in position, the alliance is secured, and the dragons ready for war. The next phase of Daenerys Targaryen's campaign for the Iron Throne is about to begin, and it will be unlike anything Westeros has seen for 300 years. In the distance, lightning illuminates the ancient peaks of Dragonmont, where legend says the first dragons were born from stone and fire. Now new dragons roost there again, and their mother plans the conquest that will either restore her dynasty or see it end in flames and glory. The Game of Thrones is about to change forever, and the players who survive will be those who understand that the old rules no longer apply when dragons return to the world. Chapter 7. The Siege of King's Landing. The dawn sky above King's Landing burns crimson as the combined host of Daenerys Targaryen appears on the horizon like a dark tide flowing across the Blackwater rush. 10,000 Dornish spears march in disciplined columns beside 2,000 Dothraki riders, while overhead 3 dragons circle the ancient capital like harbingers of a new age. The sight sends shockwaves through the city's defenders, many of whom have never seen warfare beyond tavern brawls and tournament melees. From the walls of the Red Keep, Queen Cersei Lannister watches the approaching army with a mixture of fury and growing fear. The golden-haired queen stands rigid in her green silk gown, her hands clenched as she counts enemy banners through a myrish far eye. Beside her, Grand Maester Pycelle trembles as he observes the dragons swooping low over the enemy formations. "How many?" she demands, though her voice carries less authority than it did mere weeks ago. 12,000 foot, perhaps 2,000 horse, reports Sir Meryn Trant, squinting through the morning haze. Flying the dragons of Targaryen and the sun and spear of dawn. No northern banners visible, your grace. Yet, Cersei mutters, if the dragons prove themselves here, Robb Stark will march south with the rest. She lowers the far eye and turns to face the assembled members of the small council. Recommendations? Lord Tyrion Lannister steps forward, his mismatched eyes studying the approaching threat with the calculating gaze of a man who understands siege warfare. We have 50,000 men in and around the city, sister. The walls are strong, the harbour is defended, and we control the high ground. But, Cersei's voice grows dangerous. But we've never fought dragons before, Tyrion finishes honestly. Our scorpions and catapults may bring them down, or they may prove as useful as throwing stones at the sun. We should consider terms. Terms? Cersei's laugh is sharp and bitter. With the Mad King's daughter? The same bloodline that burned men alive for sport? Their debate is interrupted by the arrival of a herald bearing a white banner. The man approaches the walls under the traditional protection of parley, or his voice carrying clearly in the morning air as he delivers Daenerys Targaryen's terms to the capital of the Seven Kingdoms. Hear the words of Daenerys Stormborn, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men, the herald calls out. Her grace offers mercy to all who lay down their arms and acknowledge her lawful claim. Surrender the usurper Joffrey and those who murdered her family, and the city will be spared. Refuse, and face the consequences of defying the blood of the dragon. The terms are reasonable by the standards of siege warfare, but Cersei's response is immediate and uncompromising. Tell the pretender that King Joffrey sits the Iron Throne by right of birth and conquest. If she wants it, let her come and take it. But as the herald departs, Cersei turns to Tyrion with new urgency in her voice. Send word to Qyburn immediately. Tell him to prepare the wildfire stores beneath the city. If that dragon whore wants to rule Ashes, let her have them. Sister, that's madness, Tyrion protests. The wildfire would kill hundreds of thousands of innocents. Better dead than ruled by Targaryens, Cersei snaps. Father always said that sometimes you must burn the field to deny it to your enemies. Meanwhile, in the enemy camp established on the south bank of the Blackwater, Daenerys holds council with her assembled commanders beneath a pavilion adorned with the three-headed dragon. Maps of King's Landing cover the table, marked with defensive positions and potential attack routes identified by Dornish scouts. The harbour chain is raised, Prince Doran reports, his weathered finger tracing the river's mouth. Our ships cannot approach the city directly. Any assault must come by land. The walls are strong, adds Oberyn Martell, his dark eyes studying the fortifications with a warrior's attention to detail. But they were built to defend against conventional armies, not dragons. A coordinated attack, ground forces to draw defenders to the walls, dragons to strike from above, could breach their defenses quickly. Daenerys studies the map, calculating angles of attack and defensive responses. Above them, the sound of wings announces the return of her dragons from their reconnaissance flights over the city. Drogon settles on the pavilion's frame, his red eyes gleaming with intelligence as he regards his mother. "What did you see?" she asks, stroking the black dragon's neck. Though they cannot speak in words, the bond between dragon rider and dragon carries more than mere affection. It carries shared senses, shared understanding. Through Drogon's memories, she sees the city's layout from above. The Red Keep's towering walls, the Sept of Baela's crystal dome, the narrow streets packed with terrified civilians. But she also sees military targets, the Tower of the Hand, the Dragon Pit, the massive scorpions mounted on the walls. Precision strikes, she decides. We target military positions, not civilians. The goal is to force surrender, not to massacre the innocent. A noble sentiment, Oberyn observes, but war has its own logic. Once the dragons begin burning, controlling the fire may prove difficult. The siege begins with Dornish efficiency. Light cavalry sweeps around the city's perimeter, cutting roads and isolating King's Landing from outside supply. Within hours, no merchant caravan or messenger raven can reach the capital without facing Dornish spears or Dothraki araks. But the real shock comes when the dragons take to the sky above the city walls. Daenerys rides Drogon for the first time over a hostile city, her crude saddle and harness allowing her to guide the black dragon with pressure from her legs and subtle shifts in weight. Below them, Rhaegal and Viserion follow in loose formation, their bronze and cream wings casting moving shadows over the Red Keep's courtyards. The psychological impact is immediate and devastating. Guards abandon their posts to gawk at creatures they had dismissed as children's stories. Citizens scream and flee through the streets as dragon shadows pass overhead. Even hardened knights find their hands trembling as they witness the return of Targaryen power in its most primal form. "Dracarys," Daenerys commands, pointing toward a scorpion emplacement on the walls. Drogon's flame engulfs the siege engine, melting bronze and iron into flowing metal that drips from the battlements like candle wax. The crew flees rather than face dragonfire, and similar scenes play out across the city's defenses as the dragons systematically destroy the weapons designed to bring them down. But the true genius of the dragon attacks lies in their precision. Unlike the wholesale destruction of legend, these strikes target only military assets. Barracks burn while nearby houses remain untouched. Guard towers collapse while surrounding shops continue their business. The message is clear. Surrender brings mercy, but continued resistance will be met with escalating force. In the Red Keep, Tyrion watches the destruction with growing admiration for the enemy's tactics. "She's not destroying the city," he observes to his sister. "She's demonstrating that she could destroy it, but chooses restraint. Every burned scorpion makes our position weaker, while proving she has the power to end this siege whenever she pleases." "Clever," Cersei admits through gritted teeth, but cleverness won't save her from wildfire. Unknown to the Queen, however, Tyrion has already begun his own preparations. Secret messages pass through hidden channels, carried by servants and septons who move freely through the city's chaos. The Dwarf Lord uses contacts built over years of residence in King's Landing to establish communication with the besieging forces. The response comes through Oberyn Martell, delivered by a washerwoman who has served the Red Keep for decades. "The imp offers assistance," the message reads. Passages exist to evacuate civilians before any final assault. He also warns of wildfire stores beneath the city, enough to burn everything to ash if triggered by a desperate queen. The warning about wildfire changes everything. Daenerys calls an immediate halt to the dragon attacks, recognizing that pushing Cersei too far too fast might result in the very massacre she seeks to avoid. Instead, she shifts to a more patient strategy, slow strangulation rather than quick conquest. That patience is tested when trumpets sound from the city's gates, and a small force emerges under the golden lion of House Lannister. Sir Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer himself, leads 300 mounted knights in a desperate sortie designed to break the siege lines and force the dragons to fight on the ground. "Bold," Oberyn comments, watching the Lannister cavalry charge across the field toward their positions. "Foolish, but bold." He seeks single combat, Daenerys realizes, studying Jaime's formation. He knows he cannot defeat dragons in the open, so he challenges our champions. If he wins, it might inspire the city's defenders. If he loses, we have the finest knight in Westeros as our prisoner, Oberyn finishes, a predatory smile crossing his features. "I'll take that challenge." The single combat between Jaime Lannister and Oberyn Martell becomes the stuff of legend within moments of its beginning. Both men are renowned fighters, Jaime for his sword work, Oberyn for his spear and poison. They meet in the space between armies, while thousands watch from walls and siege lines. Jaime fights with desperate skill, his golden sword dancing in complex patterns that seek gaps in Oberyn's defenses. But the Red Viper is patient, using his spear's reach and his own mobility to avoid the Lannister knights' attacks while landing precise strikes of his own. The duel ends when Oberyn's spear point finds the gap between Jaime's breastplate and shoulder guard, the Dornish steel piercing deep enough to draw blood, but not to kill. Jaime, suddenly dizzy from whatever coating the spear carries, stumbles and falls as paralytic poison courses through his system. "Yield!" Oberyn commands, his spear point at the fallen knight's throat. "Your poison will pass in time, but your pride need not be fatal." Jaime, unable to speak through the paralysis, but still conscious, manages a slight nod. The sight of the legendary Kingslayer defeated and captured sends shockwaves through both armies, but the reaction within King's Landing proves most significant. The sight of their champions falling to foreign enemies, combined with the daily terror of dragons overhead, finally breaks the city's fragile unity. In the poorest quarters, where the faith of the Seven has always been strongest, riots begin as common folk demand an end to the siege. The faith militant, armed with simple weapons but burning with righteous fury, emerges from the sept of Baelor and begins marching toward the Red Keep. Their leader, a grizzled septon known as the Elder Brother, declares that the city's suffering comes from harboring kinslayers and usurpers. "The dragons are the gods' judgment upon us," he preaches to growing crowds. "So long as bastards sit on thrones and sisters lie with brothers, heaven's wrath will burn above our heads." The religious uprising catches Cersei completely off guard. Within hours, the faith militant controls half the city, and her own guards begin looking nervous as they face enemies both within and without the walls. "Your Grace," Tyrion says urgently, entering the throne room where Cersei sits rigidly on the Iron Throne. The situation has become untenable. The faith controls the streets, the dragons control the sky, and Father's relief force is still 3 days away. Tywin is coming? Hope flickers in Cersei's green eyes. "With 20,000 men," Tyrion confirms, "but he'll face the same dragons that defeated Stannis. And now the city itself rebels against us. We need to negotiate while we still can." But before Cersei can respond, horns sound from the walls announcing a new crisis. Tywin Lannister's vanguard has indeed arrived, but the tactical situation is worse than anyone imagined. From the battlements of the Red Keep, the full scope of their predicament becomes clear. Tywin's army approaches from the west, as expected, but between him and the city lies Daenerys' entire force. More critically, King's Landing itself burns in a dozen places as faith militant and city guards clash in the streets below. The old lion comes to rescue a city that no longer wants his protection, Oberyn observes from the enemy siege lines. How poetic. Daenerys stands in her command pavilion, studying reports from scouts and contemplating her next move. But Tywin Lannister, the architect of her family's destruction, the man whose soldiers killed her infant nephew and niece, approaches with an army at his back. But that army must now choose between attacking her dragons or entering a city in open revolt against Lannister rule. Above them all, 3 dragons circle in the afternoon sky, their presence a constant reminder that the rules of warfare have changed forever. The siege of King's Landing has become something unprecedented, not just a battle for the Iron Throne, but a test of whether dragons can restore order to a realm that has forgotten how to accept their authority. The Game of Thrones reaches its climax as 3 armies, Targaryen, Lannister, and Faith Militant, converge on the ancient capital of Westeros. By sunset, one of them will control the Iron Throne, or the city will burn in the flames of wildfire and dragon's breath. The outcome will determine not just who rules the 7 kingdoms, but whether the kingdoms themselves will survive the return of dragons to the world. Chapter 8. Fire Made Flesh. The Battle of King's Landing begins at dawn with the clash of steel and the screams of dying horses as Tywin Lannister's relief force crashes into the rear of Daenerys' siege lines. 20,000 Westermen charge across the muddy fields south of the capital, their golden banners bright against the grey sky, as they seek to crush the Dragon Queen's army between hammer and anvil. But Daenerys has anticipated this moment. From her command position atop Drogon, circling high above the battlefield, she watches Tywin's attack unfold with the calculating gaze of a commander who has learned to think in 3 dimensions. Below her, Prince Doran's Dornish spears wheel to face the new threat, while her Dothraki blood riders prepare to countercharge the Lannister heavy horse. "Sovs!" she commands in High Valyrian, and Drogon banks sharply toward the approaching enemy. Behind them, Rhaegal and Viserion follow in formation, their wings casting moving shadows across the battlefield as they prepare to demonstrate why dragons have always been the masters of warfare. The sight of 3 dragons diving toward his formations sends visible shock through Tywin's perfectly ordered ranks. Veterans who have fought in a dozen campaigns find themselves facing creatures from legend, and even the most disciplined soldiers begin to waver as dragon roars echo across the field. But Tywin Lannister has not ruled the Westerlands for 40 years by yielding to fear. "Scorpions!" he roars from his position with the command staff. "Bring those beasts down!" Massive crossbows swivel toward the diving dragons, their bronze-tipped bolts gleaming in the morning light. The volley that follows fills the air with spinning death, forcing Daenerys to pull Drogon into a sharp climb to avoid the projectiles. One bolt passes close enough to tear through the edge of Rhaegal's wing membrane, drawing first blood in the battle and proving that dragons, while mighty, are not invincible. "Dracarys!" Daenerys calls out, targeting the scorpion emplacements with surgical precision. Dragonfire washes over the siege engines, melting bronze and iron while their crews flee in terror. But even as the dragons destroy Tywin's anti-air defenses, the ground battle intensifies with desperate fury. Oberyn Martell leads the Dornish left wing against Tywin's advance guard, his red-tipped spear dancing through enemy ranks while his men maintain their famous mobility. "For Elia!" he shouts, and the cry is taken up by 10,000 Dornish throats as they surge forward to meet their ancient enemies. Meanwhile, inside King's Landing itself, the city erupts in chaos as the Faith militant clashes with Lannister guards throughout the narrow streets. The sound of battle from outside the walls has emboldened the religious uprising, and the elder brother leads hundreds of armed septons toward the Red Keep itself. In the throne room, Queen Cersei sits rigidly on the Iron Throne, while reports of disaster pour in from every direction. Her beautiful face shows no emotion, but her hands grip the throne's armrests so tightly that blood seeps from cuts made by the ancient swords. "Your Grace," Grand Maester Pycelle stammers, "the dragons have destroyed half our scorpions. Lord Tywin's attack proceeds, but the enemy was ready for him, and the Faith militant has taken the Great Sept." "Enough!" Cersei interrupts, her voice carrying deadly calm. "Send word to Qyburn. Tell him to light the wildfire, all of it." "Sister, no!" Tyrion bursts into the throne room, having overheard the command. "You'll kill everyone in the city, innocent and guilty alike." "Better ashes than dragons," Cersei replies, echoing her father's philosophy. "If I cannot rule King's Landing, then no one will." But before her command can be carried out, new horns sound from the city's northern gates. The sound carries a different note, not the harsh brass of Lannister trumpets, but the deeper, wilder call of northern war horns announcing the arrival of unexpected allies. From the battlements of the Red Keep, the sight is unmistakable. 10,000 northern soldiers pour through the King's Gate under the direwolf banners of House Stark. At their head rides Robb Stark himself, the young king in the north, honoring his alliance with the Dragon Queen by striking at the heart of Lannister power. "The young wolf," Tyrion breathes, watching through a window as northern cavalry charges into the city's defenders. He kept his word. The arrival of Stark forces transforms the battle completely. What had been a three-way struggle between dragons, Lannisters, and Faith militant now becomes a four-sided melee as northern soldiers, fresh from their victories in the Riverlands, add their strength to the chaos. Robb Stark proves why he has never lost a battle. His forces sweep through King's Landing's streets with tactical precision, driving toward the Red Keep while avoiding civilian areas where the Faith militant maintains control. The young king has studied the city's layout carefully, and his assault unfolds with the methodical efficiency that has made him legendary. "Grey Wind!" Robb calls to his direwolf, and the massive beast bounds ahead of the cavalry charge, his howl sending terror through enemy ranks already shaken by dragon roars overhead. Outside the city walls, and the main battle reaches its crescendo as Tywin's forces find themselves trapped between Dornish spears and northern steel. The old lion's tactical genius cannot overcome the simple mathematics of being outnumbered and outmaneuvered on multiple fronts. Above it all, Daenerys coordinates her dragons with increasing sophistication. Drogon strafes Tywin's heavy horse, breaking their charge before it can reach the Dornish lines. Rhaegal supports Robb's assault by burning through the Red Keep's outer defences, opening paths for northern soldiers. Viserion targets the city guard barracks, preventing reinforcements from reaching the throne room, where Cersei makes her last stand. But the most crucial moment comes when a small figure slips through the chaos of the Red Keep's corridors, moving with the silent grace of a trained killer despite her youth. Arya Stark, captive of the Lannisters for months, finally sees her chance for freedom as battle rages around her prison. "A girl is ready to leave this place," says a familiar voice from the shadows. Jaqen H'ghar emerges from an alcove, his strange smile unchanged despite the chaos surrounding them. A man has been waiting for the proper moment. "The dragons," Arya whispers, understanding immediately. "You knew they would come." A man knows many things. A girl's brother approaches from the north, her queen friend from the south. Time to join family, yes? Together they slip through secret passages that Jaqen knows with suspicious familiarity, emerging finally in the Red Keep's Godswood, where northern soldiers have already secured the area. The reunion between Arya and Robb is emotional, but brief. There is still a war to finish. "Where is Sansa?" Robb asks urgently, holding his little sister tight. "Safe chambers in the Tower of the Hand," Arya replies. "But there are others, Joffrey, Cersei, Tyrion. They're in the throne room." Meanwhile, in that throne room, the situation reaches its breaking point as reports arrive of disasters from every front. Tywin's army is breaking under dragon attack. Northern forces control half the Red Keep, and the Faith militant has reached the throne room's outer doors. "Light the wildfire," Cersei screams at Qyburn. "Light it now!" But Tyrion moves faster than his alchemist sister expects. As Qyburn reaches for the signal torch that will ignite caches of wildfire throughout the city's foundations, the dwarf lord draws a crossbow taken from a fallen guard. "I'm sorry, sister," he says quietly, then shoots Qyburn through the heart before the man can complete his task. The throne room erupts in chaos as King's Guard try to protect their queen while Lannister guards clash with Faith militant, pouring through the doors. In the confusion, King Joffrey, brave when facing helpless prisoners, but cowardly when facing real danger, attempts to flee through a secret passage behind the Iron Throne. He does not get far. Oberyn Martell, having fought his way through the Red Keep's corridors with single-minded purpose, intercepts the boy king in the passage that was meant to provide escape. "Running, your grace?" the Red Viper asks with deadly courtesy. How unlike a king. "You dare?" Joffrey snarls, drawing his sword with shaking hands. "I'm the king." "You are a bastard born of incest and cruelty," Oberyn replies, his spear appearing in his hands like a striking snake. "But mostly, you are the son of those who murdered my sister's children." The fight, if it can be called that, lasts mere seconds. Joffrey's sword work, adequate against straw targets and unarmed servants, proves pathetically inadequate against one of the finest warriors in Westeros. Oberyn's spear pierces the boy's heart with surgical precision, ending the reign of King Joffrey Baratheon in a pool of royal blood. "For Elia," Oberyn whispers, withdrawing his weapon. "For Rhaenys. For Aegon. Justice is done." The news of Joffrey's death spreads through the Red Keep like wildfire, carried by servants and guards who witness the aftermath. For many, the boy king's demise comes as relief rather than tragedy. His cruelty has made him few friends, even among his own supporters. In the throne room, Cersei's scream of anguish at her son's death marks the effective end of Lannister rule in King's Landing. With Joffrey dead, Tywin's army shattered, and dragons circling overhead, the remaining defenders begin throwing down their weapons and seeking terms. "Enough," Tyrion declares, stepping forward with his hands raised. "Enough blood. I speak for House Lannister in surrender." The words carry across the battlefield through horns and signal fires, and within minutes, the greatest battle of the War of Five Kings comes to an abrupt end. Lannister soldiers lay down their arms rather than face dragons and direwolves, while many simply switch sides entirely, recognizing that the political tide has turned irreversibly. As the sun reaches its zenith over King's Landing, Daenerys Targaryen lands Drogon in the Red Keep's courtyard for the first time. The black dragon's wings spread wide as he settles on the ancient stones where her ancestors once walked, while Rhaegal and Viserion claim perches on the towers above. The sight brings crowds of survivors, soldiers, servants, and citizens into the courtyard to witness history. Many kneel immediately, recognizing the futility of further resistance. Others stare in amazement at creatures they had dismissed as myths until this very morning. "The dragons have returned," someone whispers, and the words ripple through the crowd like a prayer. Robb Stark approaches on foot, having left Grey Wind to guard the prisoners. The young king in the north shows the weariness of a man who has fought his way across two kingdoms, but also the satisfaction of a brother who has kept his word. "Your Grace," he says formally, offering a slight bow. "The north has honored its commitments. My sisters are free, and the Lannisters no longer hold King's Landing." "The north has my gratitude," Daenerys replies, dismounting from Drogon to stand among the assembly, "and my respect. You have proved that honor and pragmatism can coexist." Around them, the greatest city in Westeros begins to come to terms with its new reality. Dragons roost where royal guards once stood watch. Dornish spears patrol streets where Lannister lions once prowled. And in the throne room, the Iron Throne sits empty, waiting for its rightful occupant to claim what 3 centuries of Targaryen rule had built. The Battle of King's Landing is over, but the real work of ruling has only just begun. As the afternoon sun slants through the Red Keep's windows, illuminating the ancient seat of power with golden light, Daenerys Targaryen stands ready to fulfill the destiny that began in fire and blood so many months ago in the ruins of Vaes Dothrak. The Dragon Queen has come home at last, and the 7 kingdoms will never be the same. Chapter 9. The Taking of the Red Keep. The great doors of the Red Keep's throne room stand open for the first time in months, their massive oak panels scarred by battle, and their golden lion inlays dulled by smoke and blood. Through the gap, afternoon sunlight streams into the ancient hall, where kings have sat for 3 centuries, illuminating motes of dust that dance like tiny spirits in the air. Daenerys Targaryen stands at the threshold, still wearing the simple riding leathers she donned for battle, her silver hair braided in the Dothraki style, but crowned with nothing more than dragon scales that have fallen naturally from Drogon's hide. Behind her, the sound of wings fills the vast space, as her 3 children explore the seat of Targaryen power for the first time in 17 years. "The throne room," Ser Jorah murmurs beside her, his weathered face showing emotions too complex for words. "I stood here once, when your father held court, before Robert's rebellion, before everything changed." Daenerys steps forward slowly, her boots echoing on the ancient stones as she takes in the sight before her. The Iron Throne rises from its platform like a mountain of melted swords, each blade representing a conquered enemy, each point and edge telling stories of submission and resistance. Above it, Stained glass windows cast patterns of coloured light that shift and change as clouds pass overhead. But the throne is not empty. Queen Cersei Lannister sits rigidly upon the seat of kings, her green silk gown pristine despite the chaos of battle, her golden hair arranged with perfect precision. Beside her stands Prince Tommen Baratheon, though all know him now to be Tommen Lannister, a boy of 8 name days with gentle eyes and his mother's golden curls. So the dragon whore finally comes to claim her prize, Cersei says, her voice carrying across the vast hall with acid precision. How fitting that you arrive dressed like a barbarian. I arrive dressed like a conqueror, Daenerys replies, continuing her approach down the throne room's central aisle. Behind her, Prince Doran's wheeled chair rolls smoothly over the stones, flanked by Oberyn Martell and an honour guard of Dornish spears. Robb Stark walks beside them, grey wind padding silently at his heel, while former Lannister officers who chose surrender over death follow at a respectful distance. As she draws closer to the Iron Throne, Daenerys can feel the weight of history pressing down upon her. This is the seat that Aegon the Conqueror built from the weapons of his enemies. Here sat Maegor the Cruel and Jaehaerys the Conciliator. Here ruled her father, the Mad King, as before Robert's hammer brought down the dynasty that had lasted 3 centuries. You have no claim here, Cersei continues, though her voice carries less authority than desperation now. This throne belongs to my son, by right of conquest and inheritance. Your son? Daenerys observes, studying the frightened boy who stands beside his mother, the child of incest and lies, a bastard with no more claim to rule than any other child in King's Landing. Tommen flinches at the words, but Cersei's green eyes blaze with maternal fury. He is a king's son and a queen's son. Royal blood flows in his veins. Lannister blood, Tyrion Lannister corrects, entering the throne room through a side door with careful steps. The Dwarf Lord's clothes are stained with battle, and his mismatched eyes show the weariness of a man who has made impossible choices. Royal blood requires royal fathers, sweet sister, and we both know Tommen's true parentage. Cersei's facade cracks at her brother's words, revealing the desperation beneath her queenly mask. You betray your own family, Tyrion. Your own nephew. I save my nephew, Tyrion replies quietly, from the fate that claimed his brother, from the madness that has consumed our house. He turns to Daenerys with formal courtesy. Your Grace, I speak for House Lannister in surrender. The boy is innocent of his parents' crimes. I ask for mercy. But before Daenerys can respond, Cersei makes her final, desperate gambit. In one swift motion, she draws a dagger from her sleeve and presses it to Tommen's throat, the blade's edge dimpling the boy's pale skin. You will not have him, she hisses, her beautiful face twisted with a mother's fierce protectiveness and a queen's wounded pride. I bore him, I raised him, and I will not see him humiliated or murdered by dragon spawn. The throne room explodes into motion. Dornish guards step forward with spears lowered, northern soldiers draw their swords, and above them all, Drogon lets out a roar that shakes dust from the ancient rafters. But Daenerys raises her hand, halting the advance before blood can be spilled. There has been enough death today, she says, her voice carrying the authority of dragons and the wisdom of someone who has seen too much war. Cersei Lannister, you threaten an innocent child. Put down the blade. He is my son, Cersei screams, backing toward the Iron Throne with Tommen held against her. I will not let you take him. Sister, Tyrion's voice cuts through the tension with unexpected gentleness. Look at him. Look at Tommen. See what your fear is doing to the boy you claim to protect. For the first time, Cersei glances down at her youngest child. Tommen's eyes are wide with terror, tears streaming down his face as he stares up at the mother who holds a knife to his throat. In that moment, the Mad Queen sees herself as her son sees her, not a protector, but the source of his greatest fear. She begins, then falters. The dagger wavers in her grip. "He can live," Daenerys says quietly, taking another step closer. "I have no quarrel with children who had no choice in their parents' crimes. Tommen can live, can be educated, can find his own path in the world. But not if you murder him here in this throne room. The psychological battle lasts an eternity that spans mere heartbeats." Finally, Cersei's grip on the dagger loosens and the weapon clatters to the stones. She collapses against the Iron Throne, her perfect composure finally broken as sobs rack her body. "Take him," she whispers. "Take him, and let him live free of this cursed crown." Tyrion moves forward carefully, gently taking his nephew's hand and leading the frightened boy away from the throne. Tommen looks back once at his mother, confusion and love warring in his young face, but he allows his uncle to guide him to safety. With Cersei's surrender, the last obstacle between Daenerys and her birthright dissolves. She approaches the Iron Throne slowly, each step echoing in the suddenly silent hall. The twisted metal seems to pulse with ancient power, and she can almost hear the whispers of kings long dead. 300 years, she murmurs, reaching out to touch one of the sword hilts that forms the throne's armrest. 300 years since Aegon first sat here. Behind her, more figures enter the throne room as word spreads through the Red Keep. Sansa Stark appears in the doorway, freed from her chambers by northern soldiers and supported by her sister Arya. The reunion between the Stark sisters is emotional, but brief. Both understand that they are witnessing history. "Your Grace," Robb Stark says formally, though his voice carries warmth. The North presents Sansa Stark, freed from unlawful captivity as agreed in our alliance. Daenerys turns to acknowledge the rescued girl, or seeing in Sansa's face the same mix of relief and uncertainty that marks all survivors of the Lannister court. "Lady Sansa, you have endured much. The crown offers its protection, and whatever aid you require." "Your Grace is kind," Sansa replies with perfect courtesy, though her eyes dart nervously to the dragons perched around the throne room. "I ask only to return home to Winterfell with my family." "A reasonable request," Daenerys agrees. "The North has honored its commitments, its independence is confirmed, and its people are free to return to their own lands." The formal exchange serves as more than diplomacy. It establishes precedent for the new Queen's style of rule. Mercy for enemies who surrender, honor for allies who serve faithfully, and respect for the autonomy of those who choose cooperation over submission. Now comes the moment she has dreamed of since childhood in exile. Daenerys turns back to the Iron Throne, studying the seat of power that her family built and lost and now reclaims. The melted swords seem to shift in the changing light, their edges catching gleams like trapped starlight. "The throne of my ancestors," she says, loud enough for all assembled to hear. "Built by dragonfire, defended by dragon blood, and reclaimed by dragons reborn." Above her, Drogon spreads his wings and settles onto the twisted metal of the throne itself, his claws finding purchase among the ancient sword hilts. The black dragon's red eyes survey the assembled crowd with regal authority, while Rhaegal and Viserion claim perches on the pillars that support the throne room's vaulted ceiling. The sight of dragons roosting on the Iron Throne sends murmurs through the assembled witnesses. Some kneel immediately, recognizing the fulfillment of prophecy and legend. Others stare in amazement at creatures they had dismissed as myths until this very day. Daenerys approaches the throne where Drogon perches, and the great dragon shifts aside to make room for his mother. As she settles onto the seat of kings for the first time, the metal seems to warm beneath her touch, as if recognizing the return of Targaryen blood to its rightful place. "I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of my name, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, do hereby reclaim the Iron Throne and sovereignty over the Seven Kingdoms," she declares, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. The words echo in the ancient space, and as they fade, representatives from across Westeros step forward to acknowledge the new royal authority. Prince Doran speaks for Dawn, his voice formal but warm. House Martell bends the knee to Queen Daenerys, as our ancestors did to Aegon the Conqueror. The North acknowledges the Queen's sovereignty while maintaining its independence. As agreed, Robb Stark adds, his words carefully chosen to honor both alliance and autonomy. Even some former Lannister supporters approach the throne to offer submission. Sir Kevan Lannister, Tywin's brother, steps forward with obvious reluctance but undeniable pragmatism. House Lannister acknowledges Queen Daenerys and seeks mercy for those who served in ignorance of royal crimes. Mercy is granted to all who served lawful commands, Daenerys replies from the throne, and feeling the weight of kingship settle upon her shoulders like a familiar cloak. But justice will be done for those who commanded unlawful acts. As the afternoon light slants through the throne room's windows, Queen Daenerys begins to establish the principles that will guide her reign. Pardons for soldiers who followed orders, trials for commanders who chose cruelty, protection for the innocent caught in war's chaos, restoration of rights seized by tyrannical predecessors. The faith militant is restored to its lawful place as protector of the innocent, she proclaims, acknowledging the religious warriors who helped secure her victory. But their authority extends only to spiritual matters and the protection of the helpless. The great houses retain their traditional rights and privileges, but the crown reserves authority over matters of war, trade, and justice, she continues, balancing autonomy with central control. Cooperation will be rewarded. Rebellion will be met with dragonfire. The formal proclamations continue as representatives from across the Seven Kingdoms acknowledge the new Queen's authority. Some come willingly, recognizing her strength and the futility of further resistance. Others arrive under guard, former enemies seeking mercy in defeat. As evening approaches, the mood in the throne room shifts from formal ceremony to genuine celebration. Word has spread throughout King's Landing of Joffrey's death and the Lannister defeat, and common folk begin to filter into the Red Keep's courtyards to witness their new queen. A feast, Daenerys decides, us rising from the Iron Throne as twilight deepens outside the windows. Let King's Landing celebrate the end of the War of Five Kings and the beginning of a new reign. The great hall of the Red Keep has not seen such a gathering in years. Northern lords sit beside Dornish princes, former enemies sharing wine and stories as they adjust to the new political reality. At the high table, Queen Daenerys sits in simple elegance, her dragons perched around her, like living symbols of her power. To the Dragon Queen, Prince Oberyn raises his cup in toast, his voice carrying across the crowded hall. May her reign bring justice to the Seven Kingdoms. To Queen Daenerys, the assembled crowd responds, their voices echoing from the ancient stones. But perhaps the most meaningful moment comes when young Tommen Lannister, now freed from the burden of a crown he never wanted, approaches the high table with his uncle Tyrion. "Your Grace," the boy says, in his quiet voice, offering a perfect bow. "I thank you for letting me live. I never wanted to be king." "Then you will have the chance to be something better," Daenerys replies gently, seeing in the child's eyes the possibility of redemption from his family's sins. "What would you choose to be, if you could be anything?" Tommen considers this seriously, as only children can. A knight, perhaps, or a maester, someone who helps people instead of hurting them. Noble ambitions, the Queen agrees, and achievable ones, with proper guidance. As the feast continues into the night, Daenerys finds herself surrounded by the allies who made her victory possible. Robb Stark shares tales of his victories in the Riverlands, while Prince Doran speaks of Dorne's long wait for justice. Even Tyrion, despite his family's defeat, provides counsel on the practical aspects of ruling a kingdom. "The hard work begins tomorrow," the dwarf lord observes, refilling his wine cup. "Conquering is the easy part, Your Grace. Ruling, that requires different skills entirely." Then it's fortunate I have advisors who understand both, she replies, glancing around the table at the mixed group of former enemies and steadfast allies. Outside the great hall's windows, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like stars, and high above the city, 3 dragons circle through the night sky. The War of 5 Kings is over, the Targaryen dynasty restored, and the 7 kingdoms united once again under the rule of Dragonfire. But as Queen Daenerys retires to the royal chambers of the Red Keep, rooms that once belonged to her father and grandfather, she knows that her greatest challenges still lie ahead. Ruling a kingdom scarred by war, healing divisions between regions and religions, building a government that serves justice rather than mere power. These tasks will require all the wisdom and strength she has gained through fire and blood. Standing on the balcony of the royal tower, watching her dragons hunt above the city they now protect, Daenerys Stormborn allows herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She has reclaimed her birthright, honored her alliances, and established the foundation for a reign that might last centuries. The blood of the dragon sits the Iron Throne once more, and the realm is hers to shape according to her vision of justice and mercy. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight belongs to victory and the promise of better days ahead. In the distance, church bells ring out across King's Landing, celebrating not just the end of war, but the beginning of hope for a kingdom long divided. The Dragon Queen has come home, and the 7 kingdoms are united once more under the banner of the 3-headed dragon. Chapter 10. Queen of the 7 Kingdoms. The morning sun streams through the tall windows of the small council chamber in the Red Keep, illuminating the polished wood table where Queen Daenerys Targaryen holds her first formal council meeting as ruler of the 7 kingdoms. Around the table sit the advisors who will help her transform conquest into governance. Prince Doran Martell, his gout-ridden legs propped on a cushioned stool, Ser Jorah Mormont, weathered and loyal as ever, and surprisingly, Lord Tyrion Lannister, whose expertise in administration has earned him a place despite his family name. The immediate concerns, Daenerys begins, spreading reports across the table with practiced efficiency. Food stores are running low throughout the Crown Lands. The war has disrupted planting and harvesting for 2 seasons, and winter approaches. Dorne can provide grain and dried fruits, Prince Doran offers immediately. Our harvests have been unaffected by the northern conflicts, but transportation will be costly and slow. The Reach could provide more, Tyrion adds, studying supply manifests with the eye of a man who understands logistics. But their lords remain uncertain about the new regime, as many supported Renly, and they need assurance that cooperation will be rewarded. Daenerys nods, making notes on parchment. Summon representatives from Highgarden. The Tyrells are pragmatic. They'll support whoever offers the best terms for their people. The discussion continues as reports pour in from across the 7 kingdoms. The Riverlands bear terrible scars from Robb Stark's campaign against the Lannisters. The Westerlands face economic collapse as their gold mines struggle without adequate protection. The Iron Islands have gone ominously quiet under Balon Greyjoy's rule, suggesting potential future troubles. Perhaps most pressing, Jorah observes, are the displaced soldiers. Thousands of men from various armies now wander the countryside without pay or purpose. Some have turned to banditry. Veterans of the war, Daenerys muses. Men who fought bravely for causes they believed in. They deserve better than to become outlaws. She looks up from her notes. What if we offer them service in a new royal army? Not as conscripts, but as volunteers with regular pay and clear purpose. A standing army. Tyrion raises an eyebrow. That would be unprecedented in Westeros. The great houses have always maintained their own forces. The great houses will continue to do so, she replies firmly. But the crown needs forces loyal only to the realm itself, not to regional interests. Men who can respond to threats, whether they come from beyond the wall or across the narrow sea. The morning's council session is interrupted by Ser Axel Florent, who announces the arrival of the first formal delegation to the new Queen's court. Representatives from the Vale of Arryn have finally emerged from their mountain strongholds, having watched the War of 5 Kings from behind the Bloody Gate's protection. Lady Lysa Arryn sends her greetings, the Vale Knight reports formally, and expresses her house's willingness to acknowledge Queen Daenerys, provided the Vale's traditional autonomy is respected. The Vale remained neutral throughout the war, Daenerys observes. They offered no aid to any claimant, including myself. What commitment do they offer now? The knight shifts uncomfortably. Lady Lysa suggests a marriage alliance. Lord Robert Arryn is heir to the Vale and is a sickly boy of 6 name days, Tyrion interrupts with characteristic bluntness. Hardly a suitable consort for a reigning queen. The marriage question has become increasingly pressing as ravens arrive daily from across Westeros. Lord Hoster Tully suggests his grandson, Edmure, as a suitable husband who would bind the Riverlands to the crown. The new Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, installed after the previous lords declared for various claimants, offers his eldest son. Even some Northmen hint that a political marriage might strengthen the friendship between the independent North and the 6 kingdoms. "The realm expects me to marry," Daenerys says that afternoon, walking through the Red Keep's Godswood with Prince Doran. Above them, Rhaegal perches in an ancient oak tree, his bronze and green scales gleaming among the leaves. Yet every lord sees an opportunity to elevate his house through my marriage bed. Marriage is a tool of statecraft, Doran agrees, his voice carrying the wisdom of decades in Dornish politics. But it need not be a trap. Choose a consort who strengthens your position without threatening your authority. And if I choose not to marry at all? Doran considers this carefully. Possible, but difficult. The realm expects royal heirs, and your dragons, magnificent as they are, cannot rule after you. The question becomes whether you marry for political advantage or wait for a match that offers both political and personal satisfaction. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of wings as Drogon descends from the sky, landing heavily on the Godswood's ancient stones. Or the Black Dragon has grown significantly since their arrival at King's Landing, now large enough that his wingspan stretches nearly 20 feet when fully extended. Behind him, Viserion swoops down from the direction of the city, having completed what appears to be a hunting flight over Blackwater Bay. They're exploring their new territory, Daenerys observes, watching as her 3 children investigate every corner of the Red Keep's grounds. Drogon has claimed the ruins of the Dragon Pit as his primary roost. Rhaegal prefers the tower tops, while Viserion seems drawn to the harbour area. Good instincts, Doran notes. Each claims a different strategic position: the ancient dragon stronghold, the high ground for observation, and the water access for hunting. They understand terrain even without training. That evening, Daenerys holds her first formal court in the throne room, with representatives from across the 7 kingdoms presenting their region's needs and concerns. The Iron Throne has been modified slightly, a cushion added to make extended sessions more bearable, and a small platform installed nearby where her dragons can rest while remaining visible to petitioners. The first case involves a dispute between 2 minor houses over lands devastated during the war. Both lords present their claims with legal documents and witness testimony, expecting the new queen to rule based on traditional precedent. "Your Grace," Lord Caswell explains, "House Merryweather's lands were forfeit when they declared for the pretender Joffrey. By right of conquest, those holdings should pass to loyal houses. House Merryweather bent the knee when your Grace arrived," counters Sir Owen Merryweather. "We were pardoned and restored to our holdings. The lands are ours by right of royal decree." Daenerys studies both men carefully, noting their nervous glances at the dragons perched nearby. This first judgment will set precedent for future disputes, and every lord in the realm will study her decision. "Both claims have merit under different legal frameworks," she begins, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. House Merryweather did declare for the usurper, but they also surrendered peacefully when offered terms. House Caswell showed loyalty to the rightful queen, but seeks to profit from neighbors' misfortune. She pauses, letting the tension build as she considers options. The lands in question will be divided. House Merryweather retains their ancestral seat and sufficient holdings to maintain their dignity. The contested territory becomes crown land, to be administered for the benefit of small folk displaced by war. Both houses will contribute to establishing refugee settlements and rebuilding destroyed villages. The solution satisfies neither party completely, but both recognize its fairness and the futility of arguing with a queen flanked by dragons. The judgment establishes important precedents: mercy for enemies who surrender, reward for loyal service, but primacy for the realm's welfare over individual advancement. Similar cases follow throughout the afternoon. Trade disputes, marriage contracts disrupted by war, questions of inheritance when heirs died in battle, each requiring careful balance between law, justice, and practical governance. The most significant moment comes when Tyrion Lannister formally approaches the throne during the evening session. The Dwarf Lord has been serving as an informal advisor, but his official status remains undefined. "Your Grace," he begins with a slight bow, "I come to offer formal service to the crown. Despite my family's complicated history with House Targaryen, I believe I can serve the realm's interests." The offer creates immediate tension among the assembled court. Many remember Tyrion's service to previous kings, but others see only the name Lannister and the reminder of past grievances. "Lord Tyrion," Daenerys replies carefully, "your counsel has proved valuable in recent days, but the position of Hand of the Queen requires absolute trust and loyalty. How can the realm be assured of your commitment?" "By my actions rather than my words, Your Grace," he responds. "I have already chosen the realm's welfare over my family's interests. I prevented my sister from burning King's Landing rather than surrender it. I offer knowledge of administration, finance, and law accumulated through years of service. Most importantly, I offer the perspective of someone who has seen power's corruption and seeks to prevent its repetition." The throne room falls silent as Daenerys considers the proposal. Around her, the dragons watch with intelligent eyes, and she can almost feel their thoughts. Predators recognizing another predator, but one who has chosen to serve rather than hunt. The position of Hand requires confirmation by the Queen and acceptance by the small council, she decides. "Lord Tyrion, you are appointed to the small council as Master of Coin, where your knowledge of royal finances will serve the realm's recovery. The position of Hand remains unfilled until I am certain of the right choice." It's a compromise that acknowledges Tyrion's value while avoiding the controversy of immediate elevation. The appointment as Master of Coin provides a path for him to prove himself through service. As the formal court session ends, a raven arrives with news that changes the evening's mood entirely. Sir Davos Seaworth, who remained at Dragonstone after Stannis' defeat, sends word of troubling developments in the Stormlands. Stannis has retreated to Storm's End and declared himself the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms in exile, Daenerys reads aloud to her assembled advisers. "He claims my victory was achieved through sorcery and foreign intervention, not legitimate conquest. Several Stormlords have declared for him, and he's fortifying Storm's End for siege." "The man is nothing if not persistent," Tyrion observes dryly. "Stannis would rather die than admit he was wrong about anything." "He still has ships," Jorah warns, "and Storm's End is perhaps the strongest castle in Westeros. If he's determined to continue fighting, then we'll deal with him when the realm is stronger," Daenerys decides. Stannis has been reduced from a major threat to a regional problem. To let him sulk in Storm's End while we build a government that actually serves the people. The next morning brings a different kind of challenge, as Robb Stark formally requests audience to finalize the terms of Northern independence. The young king in the north arrives in the throne room with a small delegation, including his sisters Sansa and Arya, both now free to return home. Your Grace, Robb begins with formal courtesy. The North seeks confirmation of its independence, as agreed in our alliance. We wish to maintain friendship and cooperation with the Six Kingdoms while governing our own affairs. The North honored its commitments during the war, Daenerys replies from the Iron Throne, with Drogon perched nearby. Your independence is confirmed, and your friendship welcomed. What terms do you propose for ongoing cooperation? The negotiations proceed smoothly, establishing trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and coordination on threats that affect both realms. The Night's Watch, guarding against dangers beyond the Wall, will receive support from both kingdoms. The arrangement becomes a model for how autonomous regions can cooperate within a broader framework. Winter is coming, Robb concludes with a slight smile at the Stark words. But it will find the North and South working together against common threats. As the Stark delegation prepares to depart for Winterfell, Daenerys allows herself a moment of satisfaction. The War of Five Kings is truly ended, not just through military victory, but through political settlement that respects both conquest and cooperation. That evening, standing on the royal balcony overlooking King's Landing, she watches her dragons hunt in the twilight sky above the city. The people below no longer flee in terror when shadows pass overhead. They're beginning to see the dragons as protectors rather than threats. The hardest part begins now, Tyrion observes, joining her on the balcony with wine for both of them. Conquest ends in a day. Ruling well takes a lifetime. My ancestors ruled for 3 centuries, she replies, accepting the wine. Some ruled well, others poorly. The challenge is learning from their examples without repeating their mistakes. Below them, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like fallen stars, and in the distance, the sea reflects moonlight like scattered silver. The 7 kingdoms stretch beyond the horizon, 6 under her direct rule, the 1 independent but friendly, all part of a realm that has finally found peace after years of war. Tomorrow I meet with the Faith's representatives, she continues, outlining the next day's schedule. They want assurance that the new reign will respect religious freedom while maintaining separation between spiritual and temporal authority. The Faith militant proved valuable during the siege, Tyrion notes, but they could become problematic if they grow too powerful. Balance, Daenerys agrees. Always balance. Strong enough to maintain order, not so strong as to threaten freedom. Religious enough to respect faith, secular enough to govern fairly. The conversation continues as night deepens over the capital. 2 unlikely allies planning the restoration of a kingdom long divided by war and mistrust. Above them, 3 dragons roost in the ancient towers of the Red Keep, living symbols of power restored, but hopefully wielded with wisdom, learned through fire and blood. The reign of Queen Daenerys Targaryen has begun, and the 7 kingdoms face a future bright with possibility, tempered by the hard realities of governance, in a world where dragons have returned to remind all that power, properly used, serves justice rather than mere ambition. Chapter 11. The Last Baratheon. The winter morning dawns cold and grey over Storm's End, the ancient Baratheon stronghold rising from its clifftop perch like a stone fist defying the storms that have battered it for 7 centuries. From the castle's massive walls, the golden stag banners of House Baratheon snap in the fierce wind, while below them, the crowned stag of King Stannis flies in stubborn declaration that the war is far from over. In the castle's great hall, Stannis Baratheon paces before a massive hearth where logs burn with unusual colours, blues and greens that have nothing to do with natural flame. Beside the fire, Melisandre of Ashai chants in the ancient tongue of her homeland, her red silk robes seeming to dance with flames that exist only in her ritual circle. The Lord of Light shows me truth in the fires, she declares, her voice carrying the conviction of absolute faith. The Dragon Queen grows complacent in her usurped throne. R'hllor grants one final chance to restore righteousness to the Seven Kingdoms. Stannis pauses in his pacing, his weathered face showing the strain of months spent gathering what forces remain loyal to his cause. 3,000 men camp in Storm's End's courtyards and surrounding lands. Stormlords who remember their oaths to Robert Baratheon, hedge knights seeking glory, and religious fanatics drawn by Melisandre's promises of divine intervention. "She has dragons," he says flatly, stating the obvious obstacle that has haunted his planning. 3 of them, grown larger and stronger since our defeat at Dragonstone. "Dragons are creatures of fire," Melisandre replies with serene confidence. "But the Lord of Light is fire itself, the source from which all lesser flames draw their power. Give me the sacrifice I require, and R'hllor will grant you dominion over Dragonfire." The sacrifice she demands weighs heavily on Stannis' conscience, despite his grim pragmatism. The 50 prisoners taken during raids into the Crownlands await execution in Storm's End's dungeons, sellswords and levies who served the Dragon Queen, men whose only crime was loyalty to what they believed was lawful authority. "Burning prisoners violates the laws of war," he says, though his voice lacks conviction. "Even my enemies deserve honorable treatment in captivity." "Honor is luxury for those who serve false gods," Melisandre counters. "R'hllor demands sacrifice to grant victory. Would you let squeamishness cost you the Iron Throne?" From the high table where he advises his king, Sir Davos Seaworth, recently returned from his mission to treat with remaining Baratheon supporters, watches this exchange with growing unease. The Onion Knight has served Stannis faithfully for years, but he has seen too much of Melisandre's magic to trust its promises. "Your Grace," he interjects carefully, "perhaps we should consider other options. The Dragon Queen has shown mercy to enemies who surrender. Terms might be negotiated." "Terms?" Stannis' laugh is bitter and sharp. "I am the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, Davos. I do not negotiate terms with usurpers, no matter how many dragons they command." The argument continues through the morning as ravens bring reports from across the Stormlands. Daenerys Targaryen's forces are on the move, not in massive numbers, but with dragons overhead. Numbers matter less than they once did. Lord Caron reports Dragonfire destroying his seat at Nightsong when he refused to bend the knee. Lady Dondarrion sends word from Blackhaven that she has submitted to avoid similar destruction. "They come to finish what we started," Stannis observes, studying the reports with tactical attention. "Good. Better to face them here, where Storm's End's walls provide some protection against aerial attack." By midday the decision is made. Stannis orders the prisoners brought to the courtyard, where a massive pyre has been constructed from Storm's End's furniture and stores of seasoned wood. The 50 men, some barely old enough to be called soldiers, are bound and arranged around the base of the wooden mountain, while Melisandre prepares her greatest ritual. "For righteousness," she calls out to the assembled garrison. "For the true king! R'hllor, accept this offering, and grant your servant dominion over the false dragons." The flames catch with unnatural speed, roaring higher than any normal fire as the prisoners' screams echo off Storm's End's ancient walls. But instead of the divine intervention Melisandre promised, something goes catastrophically wrong. The flames, instead of spreading outward to empower Stannis' cause, spiral inward toward the Red Priestess herself. "My lord!" she screams as the fire she summoned turns against her. "Why do you—" The flames engulf Melisandre completely, and her cries become inhuman shrieks before falling silent entirely. When the magical fire finally subsides, nothing remains but ash where the priestess once stood, leaving only the regular flames consuming the wooden pyre and its victims. Stannis stares at the spot where his spiritual advisor vanished, his rigid face showing the first crack in years of absolute certainty. "My Lord of Light abandons me," he says quietly, speaking to no one in particular. Even the gods tire of my righteousness. The psychological impact on his forces is immediate and devastating. Soldiers who had followed Stannis from religious conviction begin deserting within hours. Those who remain do so from personal loyalty or simple lack of alternatives. But the certainty that sustained their cause has been shattered along with Melisandre's promises. That evening, as the last light fades from the winter sky, the sound of wings announces the arrival of the enemy. 3 dragons circle Storm's End in the darkness, their forms barely visible against the stars, but their presence felt by every person in the castle. The sight that terrified Stannis' enemies for months now comes to end his own resistance. Daenerys Targaryen lands Drogon in the field before Storm's End's main gate, well within range of the castle's scorpions and catapults, but protected by the knowledge that any attack will bring dragonfire in response. But the Black Dragon has grown magnificent in the months since the Battle of King's Landing. His wingspan now approaches 40 feet, and his presence radiates the terrible majesty of apex predation. Behind her, a modest force camps in the hills surrounding Storm's End, perhaps 2,000 men, but supported by 3 dragons and led by a queen who has never known defeat. Prince Oberyn Martell commands the Dornish contingent, while Ser Jorah leads levies raised from houses that declared for Daenerys during her march south. "Stannis Baratheon!" Her voice carries clearly across the field, amplified by the winter air and the ancient acoustics of Storm's End's architecture. "I offer you the same terms I have offered all who opposed me: surrender and live. Continue this futile resistance and face the consequences." From Storm's End's walls, Stannis appears in his burnished armor, the golden stag of his house prominent on his breastplate. Even at this distance, his rigid bearing communicates absolute defiance. "I'm the rightful king," he calls back, his voice carrying the iron conviction that has sustained him through years of struggle. "I do not treat with usurpers, no matter what creatures they command." "Then we settle this as our ancestors did," Daenerys replies, dismounting from Drogon to stand on the frost-covered grass. "Single combat between rulers. If you prevail, I withdraw and acknowledge your claim. If I prevail, Storm's End surrenders unconditionally." The challenge creates immediate uproar among both forces. From the castle walls, Davos shouts protests about the unfairness of such a contest. From the Dragon Queen's camp, Oberyn and Jorah voice their own objections to their queen risking herself unnecessarily. But Stannis, hearing the challenge, feels something stir within him that has been dormant since Melisandre's death, a sense of destiny, of personal trial rather than divine mandate. "Single combat," he agrees, his voice carrying across the field. "At dawn. No dragons, no armies. Steel against steel, as warriors have settled disputes since the world began." The night passes slowly for both camps. In Storm's End, Davos makes one last, desperate attempt to dissuade his king from what seems like certain suicide. "Your Grace, she is young and quick, trained by Dothraki warriors and seasoned by months of combat," he pleads. "You are a great battle commander, but personal dueling was never your strength." "I know," Stannis replies with surprising calm, "but I also know that I cannot continue this war. Melisandre's death was a sign. The god I trusted has abandoned me. My cause is lost, and continuing resistance serves no purpose except my own pride." He pauses, staring out the window toward where dragonfire glows in the enemy camp. "At least this way, my death will have meaning. Storm's End will surrender, and my remaining followers will live." In the enemy camp, Daenerys faces similar arguments from her own advisors, though for different reasons. "Khaleesi, this serves no purpose," Jorah argues. "Your dragons can take Storm's End whenever you choose. Why risk yourself against a desperate man, with nothing left to lose?" "Because sometimes a queen must lead by example," she replies, checking the edge on the Valyrian steel sword that Prince Oberyn gifted her after Joffrey's death. Stannis Baratheon is a man of honor, even if his cause is wrong. He deserves to face me as an equal, not to be burned alive by dragons he cannot fight. Dawn arrives grey and cold, with frost covering the field between Storm's End and the Dragon Queen's camp. Both rulers appear exactly as the sun breaches the horizon. Stannis in full plate armor bearing the crowned stag, Daenerys in lighter mail and leathers that allow for greater mobility. They meet in the center of the field, their seconds measuring out the formal distance required for honorable combat. Around them, soldiers from both armies watch in silence as two claimants to the Iron Throne prepare to settle their dispute with steel rather than armies. "I have never yielded in my life," Stannis says quietly as they salute each other with their weapons. "I do not expect to begin today." "Then we understand each other," Daenerys replies, raising her Valyrian steel blade. No quarter asked or given. The duel begins with careful probing, each fighter testing the other's reflexes and style. Stannis fights with the methodical precision that has characterized his entire life, using his superior reach and strength to control distance and tempo. Daenerys relies on speed and unpredictability, her Dothraki training evident in movements that flow like water around his rigid patterns. For long minutes, neither gains significant advantage. Stannis' experience shows in his defensive technique, turning aside attacks that would cripple lesser warriors. But Daenerys' youth and conditioning begin to tell as the fight continues, her stamina exceeding his despite his superior armor. The turning point comes when Stannis, pressing an attack with characteristic determination, overextends himself slightly in pursuit of a decisive strike. Daenerys flows around his blade like smoke, her Valyrian steel finding the gap between his gorget and helm with surgical precision. Blood flows freely from the wound, and Stannis staggers, his vision blurring as strength leaves his limbs. But instead of delivering a killing blow, Daenerys steps back, lowering her weapon. "Yield," she commands, her voice carrying both authority and unexpected compassion. "You have fought with honor, Stannis Baratheon. There is no shame in yielding to superior force." Stannis, kneeling in the frost-covered grass with blood staining his surcoat, looks up at the young queen who has defeated him in single combat. For the first time in years, his rigid certainty cracks completely, revealing the man beneath the unbending king. "I yield," he says quietly, the words seeming to cost him physical pain. Storm's End submits to Queen Daenerys Targaryen. The cheers that rise from the Dragon Queen's forces echo across the field, while Storm's End's gates open to disgorge its garrison in formal surrender. But Daenerys, instead of claiming victory, kneels beside her fallen enemy with genuine concern. "You fought well," she tells him, "better than I expected. Your honor remains intact, regardless of the outcome." "Honor," Stannis repeats bitterly. "What good is honor to a defeated king? What becomes of me now? Execution? Exile? Some tower prison to rot in shame?" "None of those," Daenerys replies, surprising both him and the assembled witnesses. "The Night's Watch always needs experienced commanders. The Wall faces threats greater than any of our kingdom's squabbles. Serve there and find redemption in protecting the realm rather than trying to rule it." The offer stuns Stannis into silence. The Night's Watch, honorable exile, purpose without power, service that might restore meaning to a life shattered by defeat. After long consideration, he nods slowly. "I will take the black," he agrees. "Better to serve the realm as a brother of the Watch than to sulk in defeat as a failed king." The formal surrender of Storm's End proceeds with unusual courtesy for a defeated stronghold. Stannis' remaining followers are offered the same terms given to all who submit: pardon for those who served lawful commands, punishment only for those who committed actual crimes. But the most significant moment comes when a young man approaches from among Storm's End servants, a bastard blacksmith named Gendry, who has worked in the castle's forges since childhood. "Prince Oberyn," studying the young man's features with knowing eyes, brings him before Queen Daenerys. "Your Grace," Oberyn says with barely concealed amusement, "may I present Gendry, bastard son of Robert Baratheon. The resemblance to his late father is unmistakable." Indeed, Gendry's features carry Robert's strong jaw and dark hair, marking him clearly as a product of the dead king's numerous dalliances. More importantly, he represents an opportunity to resolve the Stormland succession without continued conflict. "Gendry," Daenerys says, studying the nervous young man, "would you accept legitimization as Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End? The Stormlands need leadership that can bridge the gap between old loyalties and new realities." The offer overwhelms the young blacksmith, who had expected nothing more than continued obscurity in his forge. "Your Grace, I know nothing of lordship. I can work metal, but I've never governed anything larger than a smithy." "You can learn," she assures him, "and you'll have advisors to help. Sometimes the best lords are those who understand common people's needs because they've lived among them." That evening, as Storm's End's Great Hall hosts a feast celebrating the end of the last major resistance to Targaryen rule, Daenerys reflects on the campaign's outcome. Stannis' defeat was inevitable, but his honorable surrender and acceptance of exile provides a model for how defeated enemies might find redemption rather than destruction. "'Twas a bloodless victory," Oberyn observes, raising his cup in toast. "Your mercy may prove wiser than Aegon's conquest. Fear compels submission, but respect builds loyalty." "The realm has seen enough blood," she replies, watching as Stannis, still wearing his armor but now bearing the black cloak of the Night's Watch, prepares for his journey north. It's time for healing instead of more wounds. Outside Storm's End's windows, 3 dragons roost on the castle's ancient towers, their presence a reminder that the age of dragons has returned to Westeros. But unlike their ancestors who ruled through fear and fire, these dragons serve a queen who has learned that true strength lies not just in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when mercy serves better than conquest. The last major threat to Queen Daenerys Targaryen's rule has been resolved not through massacre, but through honor, setting a precedent that will shape her reign for years to come. The Stormlands have new leadership, Stannis has found honorable purpose in exile, and the realm moves closer to the peace that has eluded it since Robert Baratheon's death. As winter deepens over the 7 kingdoms, Queen Daenerys prepares for the final journey back to King's Landing, where the real work of rebuilding a war-torn realm awaits. The conquest is complete. Now comes the greater challenge of ruling well enough to justify the price paid in blood and dragonfire. Chapter 12. Spring comes to Westeros. 1 year later. The morning sun rises over King's Landing on a realm transformed, its golden light illuminating a city that has shed the scars of war and siege to emerge more prosperous than it has been in generations. From the highest tower of the Red Keep, Queen Daenerys Targaryen watches the harbour, where merchant ships from across the known world wait their turn to dock, their holds heavy with goods that speak to renewed prosperity and hope. The Queen herself has changed in the year since her coronation. Marriage to Prince Quentyn Martell has brought political stability and personal contentment, while the daily responsibilities of governance have tempered the fire of conquest into the steady flame of wise rule. At 21 name days, she carries herself with the confidence of a woman who has found her place in the world, no longer the uncertain exile who once stood in the ruins of Vaes Dothrak. The harbour master reports that we're turning away ships, Lord Tyrion Lannister observes, joining her on the balcony with the morning's reports. As Hand of the Queen, a position he earned through a year of faithful and effective service, the Dwarf Lord has proven invaluable in transforming Daenerys' vision of justice into practical governance. "Turn away ships?" she asks with amusement, studying the crowded waters. "That's a problem I never expected to have." "A good problem," Tyrion agrees, spreading documents on a small table. "Trade has tripled since the realm achieved peace. The new roads you commissioned have reduced travel time between major cities by half, and the great library of King's Landing draws scholars from as far as Yi and Ashai. The great library represents one of Daenerys' most ambitious projects, a massive institution built on the ruins of the Sept of Baelor, where knowledge from across the world is collected, copied, and shared freely with any who wish to learn. Funded by the Crown and staffed by Meisters, Septons, and foreign scholars, it has become a symbol of the new reign's commitment to enlightenment as well as order. Their morning discussion is interrupted by the sound of wings overhead. 3 dragons, no longer the kitten-sized creatures that hatched in the Dothraki Sea, but magnificent beasts with wingspans approaching 60 feet, patrol the skies above King's Landing like living shields. Drogon, now large enough to carry 2 riders comfortably, settles on the tower's broad platform with the grace of a creature born to rule the sky. The morning flight, Daenerys observes with maternal pride, stroking the black dragon's neck as he nuzzles against her. They're becoming more territorial, marking the boundaries of the realm as their own. The sight of them has discouraged 3 separate attempts at rebellion in the past year, Tyrion notes with satisfaction. House Hightower's brief resistance collapsed when Viserion appeared over Old Town. The Iron Islands fell back in line after Rhaegal sank 2 longships that refused to pay taxes. Fear may not be love, but it serves to keep the peace while love has time to grow. Indeed, the realm has found stability under Targaryen rule that it hadn't known since the early days of Robert's reign. As the great houses have accepted the new order with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but all have recognized the futility of resistance. More importantly, the small folk have embraced a queen who rules for their benefit, rather than merely extracting their wealth. The northern marriage offer, Daenerys says, changing the subject to a letter that arrived the previous evening. Lord Stark suggests that Princess Lyanna, Robb's newborn daughter, might one day wed our son when both are of age. She places her hand on the slight swell of her belly, visible despite her loose-fitting gown. The heir to the Iron Throne grows within her, product of a political marriage that has become genuinely loving. Quentyn Martell has proved himself worthy of his royal wife through quiet wisdom and unwavering support, never seeking to overshadow her authority while providing steady counsel in private moments. A northern princess and a dragon prince, Tyrion muses. That would bind the independent North to the crown through blood as well as friendship. Though perhaps we should wait to see if the child is indeed a son before planning his marriage. Son or daughter, they will inherit a stronger realm than any Targaryen has ruled since Aegon the Conqueror, Daenerys declares with quiet confidence. The houses are united, the people prosper, and the dragons ensure that unity will endure. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Grand Maester Qyburn, a controversial appointment given his history, but one vindicated by his dedication to scholarship and healing under the new regime. The grey-bearded man carries a leather satchel marked with the raven sigil of important correspondence. "Your Grace," he says with a respectful bow, "urgent word from Castle Black. Lord Commander Mormont requests immediate audience with the Crown regarding developments beyond the Wall. The message from the Night's Watch carries ominous undertones, reports of increased wildling activity, strange lights in the northern sky, and creatures that should not be moving in the haunted forest beyond the Wall. Most disturbing are the accounts of entire wildling villages found abandoned, their inhabitants vanished without trace or trail. Stannis Baratheon commands the Shadow Tower now," Tyrion observes, studying the reports. "If he deems these threats serious enough to request royal intervention, we should take them seriously. The man may be rigid, but he's not given to panic or fantasy." "Arrange a meeting with representatives from the Night's Watch," Daenerys decides, "and send word to Winterfell. If threats emerge from beyond the Wall, the North will face them first. King Robb should be informed of all developments." The morning's business continues with more pleasant matters. Today marks the first anniversary of the Battle of King's Landing and the establishment of Targaryen rule, celebrated throughout the realm as the Festival of the Dragon. In King's Landing itself, a great tournament has drawn knights and nobles from across the Seven Kingdoms to compete for royal favour and substantial prizes. From the royal box overlooking the tournament grounds, Daenerys watches as champions from every corner of Westeros demonstrate their skills. Sir Garland Tyrell, representing the Reach, faces off against Sir Lyn Corbray of the Vale in the lists. Prince Oberyn Martell, despite his age, still moves with lethal grace in the melee. Even young Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, acquits himself honourably in his first tournament as a legitimised lord. "The realm's unity made manifest," Prince Quentyn observes, his hand resting gently on his wife's shoulder as they watch a Dornish knight help a fallen northern opponent to his feet. A year ago, these men were enemies. Today they compete for sport and honour. Unity built on shared prosperity rather than shared fear, Daenerys agrees. Though the dragons help maintain order, the people support our rule because it serves their interests, not merely their lords. The tournament's highlight comes with the final joust, where Ser Jorah Mormont, now Lord Commander of the Queen's Guard, faces a mystery knight whose armour bears no identifying marks. The contest proves to be a demonstration of skill rather than a true competition, as the mystery knight reveals himself to be Prince Quentyn, much to the crowd's delight. That evening, as the tournament's festivities continue in the great hall below, Daenerys retreats to the Iron Throne room for a private moment of reflection. The ancient seat of kings appears different now, still imposing, but somehow less threatening. Cushions and careful placement of tapestries have made it more comfortable without diminishing its symbolic power. As the sun sets through the throne room's great windows, painting the ancient hall in shades of gold and crimson, her dragons take their customary evening positions. Drogon perches on the throne itself, while Rhaegal and Viserion claim spots on the pillars that support the vaulted ceiling. Their presence transforms the ancient seat of power into something both more fearsome and more protective. "A year ago, I stood in this room as a conqueror," she says to Tyrion, who has joined her for their traditional evening council session. "Now I stand here as a queen. The difference proves greater than I expected." "Conquest requires strength and courage," Tyrion replies, settling into a chair positioned near the throne's base. "Ruling requires wisdom and patience. You've shown remarkable aptitude for both transformations." They discuss the day's business, trade agreements with Braavos, infrastructure projects in the Riverlands, diplomatic overtures from the Summer Isles, before turning to more troubling matters. "The reports from beyond the wall," Daenerys says, returning to the morning's urgent correspondence. "They speak of ancient evils stirring, of threats not seen since the Long Night. If such dangers truly emerge, the realm must be ready. The dragons give us advantages that previous generations lacked," Tyrion points out. "Whatever emerges from the far north, it will face fire and blood as well as steel and courage." "True," she agrees, but her expression remains thoughtful. "Though I wonder if the dragons alone will prove sufficient. The accounts speak of creatures of ice and shadow, beings that existed before dragons, before men, before the world took its current shape." Outside the throne room's windows, all the lights of King's Landing twinkle like fallen stars, while beyond the city's walls the realm stretches away into darkness. 7 kingdoms united under one crown, protected by 3 dragons, governed by laws that serve justice rather than mere power. "Tell me honestly, Tyrion," Daenerys says as the evening deepens. "When you look at what we've built here, do you see something that will endure? Or merely another dynasty destined to rise and fall like those before it?" The hand of the Queen considers this question carefully, his mismatched eyes reflecting the torchlight as he formulates his response. "I see something new," he says finally. "Previous Targaryen kings ruled through fear and tradition. Robert's dynasty depended on personal charisma and military victory. Your rule rests on different foundations: prosperity, justice, and the active consent of the governed. Dragons provide the ultimate deterrent against rebellion, but they're not why people support your reign. And if the dragons should die? If some threat from beyond the wall or across the narrow sea should prove stronger than dragonfire? Then you'll face it with the loyalty of people who remember that you ruled for their benefit, not merely your own glory, Tyrion replies with conviction. Kings who serve only themselves die with only themselves to mourn them. Queens who serve their people become legends that inspire resistance to any who threaten what they built. As if sensing the conversation's import, Drogon raises his great head and fixes his red eyes on his mother. The bond between dragon and rider carries more than mere affection. It encompasses shared purpose, mutual protection, and the weight of responsibility for all who depend on their strength. The realm has found peace, Daenerys says, rising from the Iron Throne as midnight approaches. But peace requires constant tending, like a garden that reverts to wilderness without care. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new opportunities to prove worthy of the trust placed in us. Tomorrow, Tyrion agrees, gathering the evening's documents. But tonight, Your Grace, the realm sleeps safely under dragon wings. Whatever trials await, they will find us stronger and more united than any force that has threatened Westeros in living memory. They leave the throne room together, Queen and Hand, Conqueror and Counselor, of the Stormborn and the Imp, walking through corridors where Targaryen banners hang alongside the arms of great houses that have found prosperity in service rather than resistance. Behind them, 3 dragons settle into sleep among the ancient stones of the Red Keep, living guardians of a peace built on justice tempered by strength. Above them, stars wheel through their eternal patterns, indifferent to the affairs of men, but bearing witness to the moment when the blood of old Valyria returned to reshape the world through fire and wisdom combined. In the royal chambers where she retires each night, Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of the 6 Kingdoms, protector of the realm, mother of dragons, places her hands on her growing belly and speaks softly to the child who will inherit a world transformed. You will be born into a realm at peace, she whispers. A kingdom where dragons protect rather than terrorize, where queens rule through love as well as fear. The realm your ancestors conquered through fire and blood, you will inherit through justice and wisdom. Outside the royal windows, King's Landing sleeps peacefully under starlight and dragon guard, while beyond the city's walls, the 6 Kingdoms rest secure in the knowledge that the age of war has ended and the age of rebuilding has begun. The War of 5 Kings is over, the Targaryen dynasty restored, and spring has come to Westeros at last. But in the far north, beyond the wall where ancient magics stir and forgotten threats awaken, shadows gather that will test whether dragons and their riders can protect the realm from dangers older than kingdoms and darker than mere ambition. And the Game of Thrones may be over, but the greater game, between light and darkness, between the living and the dead, has only just begun. For now, though, the realm enjoys the peace that comes when good queens rule with wisdom and dragons fly in defense of justice. And in the throne room of the Red Keep, where kings have sat for 3 centuries, the Iron Throne waits for morning and the next chapter in the long story of Westeros, shaped now by the will of a queen who learned that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build something worthy of protection. The blood of the dragon rules once more, but it rules with a gentler flame than those who came before, promising a future where peace and prosperity might endure for generations to come.